had some other crazy things that happened to me, like after college, where I had this like crazy medical experience happen in between my like junior and senior year. I like fell into a coma and needed to have like a new liver,
Ooh.
Oh
and it
shit.
was crazy. Yeah, I was like on a mission trip, lol, in Dallas, and got sick there. And then was like woke up 2 weeks later with like a new liver. And then that was like right before my senior year, so my boyfriend comes down, like proposes to me, like, he's like, she's alive. And I remember being like, this is the most amazing like
Did
story.
he
I
put the
can't
ring
wait.
in your old liver and just like
Yeah,
have
he's
you
like,
dig it out?
here. Yes, exactly.
That's
But I
that's
remember
so
like
cute.
thinking like, oh, Mercy Me is gonna write a song about this. Like, oh, and once Mercy Me gets his paws on this story.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Casey.
I'm Sam.
I'm Jeremiah.
Jeremiah is hereby known as the Scrum Master.
I don't agree to this, and I don't want to
You
explain
are
why.
Scrum Master.
We don't want to call him that, but he insists.
I mean, everybody needs a Scrum Master. How am I supposed to get through my dailies without a Scrum Master behind me?
As long as I get to run your backlog grooming, I'm good with it.
Can run my backlog all day. Before we hit the record button here, we had started talking about, well, Jeremiah had kind of, I don't even know why you brought it up, but Christian service. At Liberty University, you have to do Christian service, and there's different things you can do to get that. Basically, it's community service, I believe. I don't think there's anything that has to be particularly Christian about it, but because they are a Christian university, it's very important to them to label it Christian service and not community service. So that way, when you go out into the world and you try to find people who will hire you to do free labor, isn't that interesting too? You have to find some people actually will turn down free labor if they know where it's coming from.
Well, I can't really blame him. Who wants to like train a college student to do something menial to help other people where you take on all the liability and they're only going to do, how many hours a semester? Was it 25?
I think it was
like
20.
It's not that many either.
What
so
are you
like
training? What? I mean, it's more like, I don't actually know what the available options were. I don't know what you could twist into Christian service.
I mean, pretty much anything. Like it could be, plenty of people did like the big brother, big sister stuff. So like, that's fine. That's like legitimately, sure, you're doing something good. I mean, you could get a lot of stuff to find that way though. Like I knew there were people, I think if you were a prayer leader, that counted, which I guess
it definitely did
sense.
because I was, and I didn't have to do Christian service. And I
I
probably
graded-
spent a little more than 20 hours a semester on it, but it's easy at Liberty, right? Because
Thank goody two shoes.
yeah, well, at a regular college, you don't have curfew. You just could go out whenever you want and do whatever you want. But at Liberty, you have to. What time did you be on the dorms? Was it 9
10.
during the week? 10 during the week?
I'm almost positive.
And there was like what, midnight or 11 on weekends?
I think it was 11. Maybe it
You
was
got a
midnight.
little loose around there on the weekends, if you know what
Yeah.
I mean.
You had
CC closes at 9, so you got 3 hours to do whatever.
to smoke cigarettes in the back parking lot before trying to down a bottle of peppermint schnapps so your breath doesn't smell like cigarettes or alcohol, because it smells like mouthwash, right?
I feel like if you had all you can eat CCs, you're not doing any of that before curfew. Like you're just sitting in a parking lot somewhere sleeping off the macaroni and cheese you ate on a Triscuit.
God, a limp biscuit, is that what
Yeah,
what they call that?
exactly.
I never liked CC's. I always thought it was fucking terrible. But people did like going there. It was cheap. It was almost cheaper than going to the school cafeteria.
Cheap is its own reward in those cases. Like Little Caesars wasn't great pizza, but it was cheap.
Better than
and if you went
CC's.
after midnight, you could pull them out of the dumpster, still not hot and fresh, but warm and fresh. But like CC's and Little Caesars are the same in that like the feeling it gives you, it's like giving yourself the flu.
Yeah.
I've only been to Little Caesars once, and I was driving like through a town on the way to visit somebody. And it was one of those towns where like, none of the options are going to be good. So you're just resigning yourself to whatever's open. And so Little Caesars had, their hot and ready stuff. And the only thing that was hot and ready was a pretzel crust, like cheese whiz sauce pizza, which I wish I was making that up. But we sat next to
the sound of that.
Yeah, we sat next to a dumpster in the parking lot and ate it. And it was the most perfect picture, eating a $5 pretzel cheese pizza next to a dumpster.
Like it was like rat with a goiter.
Yeah, it was in a military town too, if that lets you know like the quality of everybody around us and everything. We were like right next to, a strip mall and where it's
strip
basically
club
just
and
car dealership, strip club, tattoo parlor, car dealership, strip club,
check
tattoo
cashing.
Parlor.
Yeah, you definitely
Little
need
Caesars
one of those.
loans.
So did either of you ever do any Christian service stuff like that wasn't incredibly lame?
No,
I don't. Look, here's how much effort I put into the Christian service thing.
Yeah, what did you even do, Casey?
I can't remember any of it. I don't remember.
You got someone to lie for you.
Did.
You got someone to lie for you, didn't you?
I think playing in a Christian metalcore band was service to the community.
Yeah.
I was ministering.
I'm actually wondering if that could count.
I'm sure if you wrote the description correctly.
Right. I was saying if you've defined it very carefully and didn't have somebody actually come check up on it. Yeah. Or no, you just do the thing that like Christian metal bands do where in between like your fourth and your fifth song, you spend
Casey
about 30 seconds talking about like, hey, I definitely remember that.
Every
time.
Hey,
I know you couldn't understand any of those words in this church fellowship hall with this terrible sound system, but you may have noticed that everything we do is for Jesus. All
Guys,
right.
I have noticed.
Really, thank you for coming out tonight. We really appreciate your support. Before we get into this last song, I just want to let you know that, everything that we do up here, all the things that we do and playing the shows and writing music, it's all for the glory of Him. And, if you want to talk to me about that after the show,
please don't.
You can. I hope you don't.
I will be hidden behind the merch table as far back as possible. Try not to socialize. Thank you.
I feel like there were bands that would have like pocket New Testaments at their merch tables, right? Hand those out.
Probably for today. They were annoying about it.
A little bit, yeah.
For Today and Sleeping Giant were like, it's too much, guys. Like, this is escapism. Like, we want to just have fun for a minute.
Did anyone ever come up to you after a show and talk?
No.
Okay.
Who wants to talk to me about that?
I don't know.
Especially teenage me. Where I'm like, at that point, like, April and I were dating. That was where 100% of my energy was going. Like, you were inconveniencing me if you talked to me after a show and distracted me from April. So I probably wouldn't have been nice.
Also, if you look at anyone who was dressed like the scene back then, like as tight as the pants and the ill-fitting shirts were and stuff, no one's looking at any of those people going like, oh man, they've got it figured out. Like this guy's going to climb off this milk crate that he's standing on for the show. And I'm really going to go talk to him and learn some stuff.
Casey, did you write all the lyrics? I feel like you did.
I think I wrote a couple of little bridges.
Oh, you didn't?
I didn't write the rest of them.
The rest were Dan?
Yeah, Dan and Ryan wrote a bunch of them. They were a lot better at that than I am not.
What were your bridges? Guy. Can you remember anything you wrote? And can you tell it to us right now?
Oh, boy. Oh, you put me on the spot.
I know.
They weren't good. They were.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't ask you to tell us if they were good. If you can't, that's fine. I think my brother
there was one that was like
CD booklets somewhere where I can. I might be able to find that. And my parents.
You should hold on to that. Yeah.
He sent me a picture of it not too long ago.
I think one of them that I wrote was. It was okay. The song was called "From Midnight to Morning," but it was spelled morning as in like.
Of course, O-U. Oh yeah,
like I'm sad and jerking off in the corner at 3 a.m.
Now, were you using that as your song title? Just
yeah.
Everyone grieves differently, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Now, Casey, were you using that because you really wanted it as a song title, or because you didn't get to use it as your band name, and so you were just repurposing it? Because Midnight to Morning really sounds like a 2007 era metalcore band name.
It does,
for sure. but I don't think I can take credit for the name. I feel like Brian came up with the name. I had a little bridge in the middle that was like clean vocals, and I don't know if it related to the rest of the song at all, but I remember it was like burning my lips by the heat of this coal, breaking me down by the truth in your word.
Not soul. I felt like soul would have worked really well there.
Burning my lips by the heat of this coal, breaking me down by the truth in your word. And it was like harmonized. It was pretty good.
I thought for sure what I was about to hear was going to be like, especially hearing your excitement leading up to it, that you would come up with the perfect rhyme. And coal and word, it's a stretch.
Yeah, well, it is. See, I'm not a lyrics guy at all. So, like, I was thinking about it because, okay, so Sam and I are going on this podcast this week. Well, it's Back in the Cool Day.
Yeah.
For you guys that heard that episode the other day, we're going to guest on their episode, on an episode of their show. But you know, we're supposed to pick an album or two that was really important to us, like back in the cool day. And I picked Thrill Seeker by August Burns Red.
You didn't tell me that.
What did I tell you?
You told me definitely something probably by Pillar is what you should pick.
Oh yeah, well no, I picked two. I picked Satellite by POD.
Oh, you officially picked that. I should let them know since we're talking to them tomorrow.
Yeah, probably. And then I picked that Thrill Seeker. But I was talking to April about it. I'm like, yeah, I settled on a Satellite and Thrill Seeker. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know a single lyric from that album. Like, I could probably like scat every guitar riff in that album, start to finish, but I don't know a single lyric from it. So I started reading the lyrics, trying to get like prepared, and I don't understand any of what they're talking about, and B, like it, like lyrics make me like the song less. I feel like with metal,
that can happen.
Now it's not all genres, right? It's just like metal or metalcore music, where the
metal
music
in particular,
is
yeah. Okay. Like if you start reading the lyrics too close, you're like, what is this? Like, what are you talking about?
Well, usually it's whatever they could make work. Like they were just, because everyone knows that's not the main draw. Like we used to give our vocalist like 30 minutes. Like after we'd written all the music for an actual song, he would just go sit in the corner while we just played it on a loop, and he would come back later. He'd be like, all right, I'm good. And we wouldn't even ask him like, what is the stuff? He's just like, all right, we can get back to practicing. Do whatever you're doing.
Most band members don't know what the lyrics are to the songs. That's
probably not
interesting.
I feel August Burns Red was one of those bands, though. They've got a lot of songs that people really do care about the words to. I don't know if any of them are on
very
Thrill
Christian.
Seeker.
Very
Thrill Seeker was like the first vocalist. It was kind of before they settled into their lineup, but that was the one I really liked. But there's some good ones out there. You know, only through struggle have I found rest, with the piece of me taken away.
I mean, that sounds nice, I guess.
Well, that's As I Lay Dying.
Oh, okay.
He murdered he tried to murder somebody.
Yeah, I was thinking that actually sounds like As I Lay Dying.
I feel like I am often a lyrics person, but I wasn't always, I guess not always with like the metal and hardcore stuff, but hardcore more is a little bit more, you can follow along a little bit better. But
I feel like hardcore is more like punk music, where you're just there for the vibe. Like it doesn't even really matter what they're saying.
No, you pick up on the lyrics more easily. You don't have to read the booklet to know what they're saying.
If you're a lyrics guy, like you can't enjoy an Amir show. Like the lyrics are awful.
Well, there's a couple of bands where you're like, there's definitely been a few like pop punk bands where I'm like, I love the vibe, the lyrics take me out of this so fast. It's not good. Even Set Your Goals was kind of one of those. Like I love Set Your Goals, but they said some really dumb things. Which is like, it's just not cool. It's just not well written, I guess. I don't know. It wasn't for me in a lot of ways. Anyway, I want to know what Jeremiah did for Christian service now that we've gone down this road.
Well, officially, I graded papers. So
thank God for that. Though. I mean,
and let me tell you, I was a friend of the common man when it came to grading those papers. Like, I asked them how they normally did it, and I was like, And I'm a fast reader. So at first I thought I was like, well, I'll read every single paper. And then I figured out early on, because this was like for what, a 100 level, 110 level New Testament class. Like it's not a super advanced class.
Oh my
Ooh,
God.
what professor?
Message you later.
Okay.
But
what professor did I have for New Testament?
Why are you carrying water for Ergen Canner right now?
Whoa, no, not him. But once you like, I feel like once you read 5 or 10 of them, you realize like, oh, all the students are phoning this in too. Like nobody has a solid 1,200 words on this topic. They're all just like going back and regurgitating, and that made it a lot easier. Then I was like, oh, they gave up. I can give up. This is fine. This feels like an 80. This feels like a 70. Most people felt like somewhere between like an 85 and a 92, though. Just the bell curve was real fat right there.
That's pretty funny.
Just a punctuation check real quick.
Did the professor he didn't check on any of what you did?
Well, because most of them, to be fair, most of them were like, it wasn't that the paper itself had to be amazing. It was that you just had to follow the rules for it. They were like just regular assignments. So it was more like,
right?
Yeah. And so it's not like it wasn't like someone's thesis or anything like that. This was really like just assignment work. So honestly, I don't think we were doing anything that was out of the ordinary for most college classes like that. Like every professor who's grading your, what are they called? Discussion board things online. Like they know they're going to read the same paragraph over and over and over again. It's just to make sure you're checking the box. So
they're skimming like for like egregious punctuation errors. They're checking word count. They're making sure you responded to the 3 or 4 prompts. And
it's almost like college is nonsense and not worth your money.
Excuse me. I think the Bible degree that I got was worth every penny. That's why I'm going back to school.
I think so too, coincidentally enough. But then again, I didn't have to pay for it.
I'll agree with you on the like common classes everyone has to take, which I forget what are the prereqs? Not prereqs.
Oh yeah, you mean creationism? I love that one. That one was the best.
I already had like 7 years of that being homeschooled, so I was like, "Come on, what are you guys gonna do?"
Where I had to like, match the name of the abortion process to the procedure description.
No way, you did not have to do that.
I don't know if I did. Probably did.
I was gonna say. I mean, that definitely wasn't in the one that I took. I was like, I wish I took that class. That sounds like that was way more interesting.
Stomach churning.
Yeah, mine was just way more middle of the road than that. I was like, man, I feel like I got the boring guy.
I'm pretty sure that evangelicals got like their biggest boogeyman, I guess, was like whenever the topic of abortion came up, it was just throw out the words partial birth abortion, and then you have everybody on your side. Like that was their go-to.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know a lot about
the way that they described it was like, a game of whack-a-mole.
Yeah? Is that how they described it?
Pretty much.
Maybe you should enlighten us. I'm going to force you to describe this.
No, I'm out. I do have a story about Christian Service, though, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready for it, because we should probably steer away from any going down the road of abortion.
My point was, I'm not sure that the way it was described to me in my Liberty class was accurate medical description.
This was also the same era, though, that Obamacare, like the Affordable Care Act, was making the rounds. And how many like things did you have to hear about death panels and stuff? Like there was a lot of that in the water.
Death panels.
True.
True
too.
You didn't know that in socialized medicine, where they sit you down, they decide like, oh, this is too expensive, so we're just going to deny it and we'll decide that you die, because that's something that private insurance companies definitely don't do. That's something that only countries with free healthcare do.
And if there is one thing that you can say about government, is they are frugal.
I think it was maybe Saw like 7. Maybe, I don't know. One of the Saw movies, it got to a point where they Jigsaw's victims were all people who worked for an insurance company that denied people like legitimate health. Like their job was to find ways to link something to a pre-existing condition, so that way they didn't have to shell out the money for their life-saving surgery or something like that.
And they figured they could sell it because no one with health insurance watched Saw 7.
It worked.
You just tell when Casey's so proud of himself sometimes for those little quips.
Yeah. I know.
I mean, it was.
I'm gonna pull that recording and just put it in my bank.
It's like, this is going in the reel. Casey's dream is to be the fourth guy on a morning radio show. Just sits all the way in the corner drinking. Just chimes in every like 8 minutes.
Like I have my own sound effect. Like I throw out a joke and they're like, "Uh-oh, there's Casey."
The soundboard guy.
I always wondered, like, those people have to have other jobs, right? Like, that's the guy who just works on something else, and they just sit him in there so they have some extra background noise when one of the hosts doesn't have something to say.
You don't think morning radio is a lucrative industry?
I don't think so.
I think I'd rather be printing newspapers than working morning radio. Okay, here we are. We're on my headline now. Okay, so this is about Christian service, so think about it in that context. Don't rush to judgment. This is the Washington Post, and it says, "No gun, no helmet, no action. The frustrations of some novice Americans who signed up to fight in Ukraine."
Oh, no. Every war, there's some freedom lover who has to, like... Sorry, go ahead.
No. You had said this was related to Christian service?
Yeah. Well, I think Vladimir Putin is the devil's avatar.
I mean, he did just quote Jesus Christ.
Oh, the no greater love hath.
Yep.
Man, that it sounds weird. Maybe it's weirder coming from another country. I'm like, I shouldn't be offended by that, but somehow that's super offensive.
This is relatable.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, how dare you?
Well, you know what?
I don't even care, but still, how dare you?
You know what I learned in Sunday school was that Satan knows God's word too.
It's true. Oh, I've heard that. I heard that.
He trembles, but I don't see Putin trembling.
Well, he's getting old.
An angel of the Lord is what you're saying. I hear you.
Now that could be. Maybe he's Zelensky's Satan.
Now these fine gentlemen, and I'm just assuming it's gentlemen who are upset that they can't go fight over in Ukraine. Did they give any reason? Oh, they're there. Okay, so they got there. Are they being denied entrance to the battlefield for reasons like they don't live here?
I think he's upset because of the accommodations. Like he thinks he's at the paintball camp equivalent of Fire Festival.
He thinks he's a tier 1 operator rolling in to show him how the American gravy seals do it.
Yeah. It says, before he decided to buy a one-way plane ticket to Ukraine, Adam worked 2 jobs as a security guard and as a cashier at a dollar store.
All
he
that
guns and fired them.
Security guard, and then he needs another job to make ends meet.
Yeah, and he had guns, fired them at shooting ranges, but the only fighting he had done was in mixed martial arts classes.
This is all.
Wait! This guy wasn't a paintball enthusiast?
Well, at least they didn't cover that portion of his career.
He's definitely a Punisher skull sticker on the back of his pickup truck enthusiast. I guarantee it.
He has "fuck Biden" written out in automatic weapons. I don't know if you've seen those ones.
Right above the Salt Life sticker.
Yeah. The Punisher sticker is like a blue or thin blue line American flag, and it has a Trump swoopy hairdo. I don't know if you guys have seen those, but they are common around here.
Wait, that's real?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
where
yeah.
It's just juxtaposition. Ignore the Trump hair. The Punisher skull with the thin blue line thing. It's like, I don't feel like you guys understand the source material.
Have you read The Punisher? I haven't either, but I did see the movie.
I am having a hard time wrapping my mind around what kind. I feel like the people who are making these things are people like us who are just out to make a buck.
I mean, at some level, it probably starts with someone memeing it, and then most of Trump's presidency, you're not really sure the exact line where the memes stop. And it was like, we're doing some of this now. Okay, all right, guess this is real. I feel like
you're
some of those
50% correct. Yes.
Look,
I think there's definitely a financial motivation. Dude, there's a lot of money in bumper stickers.
That's true. You're just mad at Sam that you didn't think of that first. You would have thought of it and then been like, well, obviously no one would buy that. And you're 15% of the country definitely would buy that sticker.
Well,
Bro, when Biden took office, I cashed out my 401k because I knew he was going to take it at some point. I put half in bumper stickers, half in Shiba Inu.
And how's
And
that
I'm
been
just
going
going to
for you?
sit and watch, just sit and let it grow. It's like mushrooms in the closet. Just
Oh, I need to see how LGB coin's doing. Let's
we
go
haven't
branding
touched-
coin.
We haven't touched on that in a couple of weeks. I'm sure it's
Oh,
yeah, the
skyrocketed.
investors
down.
need an update.
It's down.
again.
Wait, actually, no.
Like
oh no, it's way down. Okay,
like
So I think when
today or
You didn't realize
this
there's
week?
one extra zero in front of that one, did you?
in the past month or two, it looks like it crashed for a while down to essentially zero, and then it has climbed back up to about a quarter of what it was at when we talked about it the first time.
Yeah,
I
well,
forget
that
how
sounds
many
like
zeros there were.
exponential growth to me.
Yeah.
Well, so Casey, when I look at
They're
it
on the
over
up
a
and up.
month, that's where I yelled no, because over the last month it actually has been trending up, and then I zoomed out to 3 months. I was like, oh, never mind. Like justice is definitely being served here.
Yeah, no. It's on the uptick. That's what I hear you saying.
So why in every war, every conflict, does some dumb freedom fighter from the US feel like they need to like try to take their guns and show up in this country and help? Like, and I hate to laugh at the stereotype of course it's a security guard who like does mixed martial arts, but like it's always a security guard who does mixed martial arts and wants to take his AR-15 over to the Middle East, like every time.
I'm sure there are some measured, jujitsu practicing security guards. I'm sure that there are some of those guys doing self-evaluation and really thinking things through.
Yeah, those aren't the ones getting
Not
on a
this guy,
plane.
though.
Yeah, that's not the ones buying one-way plane tickets to Ukraine to go fight Putin.
One way? You don't think he planned on coming back?
Said one way in the article. Maybe he
No.
thought like I'll come back like in a box or on their shoulders as a
The
hero.
return flights had really gone up because of inflation. He was just hoping that after he helped them win the war, the ticket prices would drop dramatically and he could save a few bucks.
He says, it says, Adam, sporting camouflage pants, is unfazed by his inexperience in combat. He will rely, he said, on sheer determination to save Ukraine and protect American values.
What American values are being protected in Ukraine exactly?
Well, let me finish.
Oh, sorry.
Here's
sorry.
a quote.
Please
Here's a
go ahead.
quote.
Mm-hmm.
Democracy and freedom are very important to the whole world, said Adam.
Okay.
What Putin is doing is simply wrong, and Ukraine is the underdog, so they need help. And his help specifically.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a terrible statement. Now, what do you think, what percentage of his motivations are? I wonder if there will be any grateful Ukrainian women who might want a middle-class American husband after all this is over. Like 25%?
He probably would have had a better
Could be
chance
in
of
there.
Getting on, what's that arranged marriage show? What's that people really enjoy?
90 Day Fiancé?
Yeah, that's probably the better way to go about it. He easily
There
could have
was
found
a
someone
great-
online. He could have bought it.
There was a great couple on 90 Day Fiancé before the 90 days where the wife was from Ukraine and the guy had been messaging her for like 18 years, like in these paid chat rooms. Oh, they covered this on Your Mom's House. It was like one of the best stories that's ever been. It's one of the best stories in reality TV. A thoroughly modern romance.
Did it work out?
Yeah, like on his third trip to Ukraine, he got to meet her because
And
she
then on
stood
his
him up
fourth
on
trip,
the
he had
other
to fight
ones.
in the war. Interesting.
Maybe this is who we're talking about. Although
Wait, he came
was not
twice
24.
and got stood up twice and then came back a third time. He flew to Europe a third time to meet her.
Yes. Yeah, it was
man.
bad. It
Those
was
are,
really bad.
Truer love hath no
Yeah.
man.
That's stalker behavior for sure.
He
Well, also, why
definitely
did
had an air of creepiness around him.
But why did she meet him the third time though? Like again,
Because
I
there
feel
was
like that's just
TV
red
cameras.
flags. But there's
She was
red
impressed
flags on
by his
both sides
commitment.
there.
No. She was like,
Ugh.
oh, this is a guy who's committed.
Because it's the perfect way to launch a Fansly.
Is Fansly the new like OnlyFans?
It's one of the OnlyFans.
It's like
Okay.
it's like OnlyFans, but you don't have to show your butthole. I don't think that's true.
Didn't know that was a
it's
prerequisite.
optional.
It's
I just
like
feel
when
like OnlyFans gets all the jokes. I figured I'd spread them out to Fansly. Rope them in, you know?
future
This
podcast sponsor
is brought
Fansly.
to you by Fansly.
Most podcasts go on Patreon, not us.
Look, I think it's worth noting,
crashed and burned.
Before we move on and introduce our guest, it's worth noting that while we're talking about what's going on in Ukraine and talking about this guy, Casey and I listened to a 2-hour podcast about what's going on over there, and we're experts now. So
we
know what's happening. Yeah. We understand what's going on. I don't know if you have any questions, Jeremiah, but we probably have answers.
Was the podcast hosted on Infowars.com or
it was
where did
not?
You get... Oh, okay. All right.
I don't like your tone.
My only point is, if you listen to a podcast on a subject, you can tell everybody what you know.
Let me guess,
act like an expert.
It was being presented to you by a millennial-aged white man.
You got the white man.
Was that the host of the podcast? Okay, not millennial.
Yeah, but
I don't know how
honestly, I'm not impressed, Jeremiah, because if you're talking about podcasts, you're like 90% accurate if you just assume it's a white person, right?
Like, well, exactly. Yeah, or a white dude. Like, it's, I think women, they're working on getting up there, but like, I think podcasting really has been like this, the modern cigar room for men.
Right.
Like,
because we have so many awesome things to offer society. And, it's just,
look how self-aware we are.
It's being stripped away from us everywhere else, right?
Whoa, here we go. All right. It's always awkward when the conversation takes that turn.
White people are the ones being oppressed right now. Am I right, guys?
Okay.
White genocide. Wait, is that too far?
Getting awfully Nick Fuentes in here. Don't look him up if your life has been good this far. Just leave it where it is.
So here's the thing about this article. Okay, what do you do with this guy? Obviously, he thinks he's doing the right thing, and there's a bunch of people there doing the exact same thing. And look, I think almost all of us are in agreement that like Putin invading Ukraine was a travesty. It's wrong on a lot of levels. It should not have happened. What do you do with the guy
now this
who
is the part
flies across the world?
No.
Well, if he was really, jokes aside, if he was really there to help, you'd think he could, if he showed up and they offered to put him to work doing other stuff, like maybe let's not give you a gun and you go serve with an army that you haven't trained with. But like, could you help with supply line, like transport, logistics, like whatever? Like, what are your skills? You're a security guard? Great. Can we have you, guard something, guard this road over here, whatever. He probably doesn't want to do that. Like, he wants to be a warrior, I'm sure. But like, if he was just there to help, I feel like that's the only thing you can do with him, because I would never turn some random dude loose. Like, if I'm the commander of some military unit, like some random guy who doesn't speak our language, or I'm assuming they all, like a lot of them are going to speak English okay, but this dude definitely doesn't speak anything but English. And, he's just going to try to like participate when not knowing their tactics or their command structure or anything like that. Like, he's going to be a liability. He's worse than if he just wasn't there at all. So
yeah, and this is like asymmetrical warfare, right? It's ununiformed people. It's like it's guerrilla warfare at this point, right? I mean, there's some uniformed forces that are fighting directly with the Russians, but then there's also like civilian resistance.
Yeah,
that's taking part in this. Like, I don't understand. Like the guy's 24. Okay, so we got to cut him some slack. He's 24. But the ego of thinking that you've got something to add to this, like in a combat scenario, like what you're talking about, like going over there and providing support and stuff like that, that makes sense. That's stuff that a person with no context for the culture or the people or really any part in the fight itself could do. But like going over there and trying to like, where's my gun? I want to get on the front line. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
No, I mean, it really doesn't. I don't know what he's expecting to happen. I don't know if maybe he just wants to. I don't really get it.
I think it's probably the stolen valor thing. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze the guy too much, knowing the little bit that we know about him. But he does MMA. Mindset. It works as a security guard. I wonder, did he wash out of the military at some point, like due to physical requirements or behavioral or something like that? And he thinks this is his chance to whatever thing he wanted to get out of the military but couldn't, and doesn't get out of being a security guard, which is like most of the time probably you're just a glorified chair sitter or walker around the park thing. Like, maybe he wants that glory, and it's not like a stolen valor type thing. But it's like, I'm going to look for valor.
Like, yeah, I'm at this point in my life where I'm not overly satisfied with everything, and this is happening. and I can jump on board, and I can feel like it's a glory. I mean, to me, it is glory seeking. Particularly
young men, it used to be considered like an honorable thing for young men to go off to war, right? Like that was a much more like gentlemanly, because war was weird before World War One. Like there was the weird honorable colonial side of going to war that would have made a lot more sense. And it's just weird because that's not a thing anymore. Like that's something that used to be considered a mark of a gentleman, and now it's trying to avoid being involved in the first place.
It's not a thing though, because otherwise there wouldn't be like this big deal about every president dodging the draft all the time. I think there's still a lot of people who are very much like who find that virtuous. Maybe fighting for your own country for sure. I'm not so sure that the people who think it's like appropriate.
I don't think
fight for your own country would respect this guy. Like if you want, sign up. You could have gone literally anywhere else to fight for your own country. That's why I wonder,
did he actually, maybe he did try to, and it didn't work out. And again, I'm not trying to like make too many assumptions based on what we know about the guy, but he kind of fits the stereotype, right?
I think we need to get him on the podcast.
I didn't even get to his frustrations here. I feel like at some point this turns into like
sexual frustration.
They're not letting me at him.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I mean, what other quotes do we got? Sorry, I thought you were done.
No. There's just based on the headline here. I think there's a lot of I wish I was a bigger part. Adam just wants to get on the battlefield as soon as possible. His first choice, he said, is to be a medic because he took a first aid class in the United States. He said his second choice, a sniper. Yes,
I want to next line, or shoot them in the fucking head and watch their heads explode.
The next line, he has no experience at either job. I love the 24-year-old optimism though. That always reminds me of like this continual thought I've had as I got older was like I've never been in a fight. Like I've never punched someone in the face. I've never like intervened in a bad situation, nothing like that. But I think I'd probably be pretty good at it.
This is like that white guy level optimism that is
because Casey, if they push you, you would just snap, and you don't like you're scared of yourself because you don't know what you would do. That's why you're so confident you'll win. Which is the other guys, they won't have that.
Casey's the guy who like grabs the back of his shirt and tries to hand it to somebody. He's like, "Hold me back! Hold me back!"
I just love that like that typical like dude train of thought. That's like, well, I've never really fought anybody, but I think I'd probably be pretty good at it. I'm also determined. I've seen a lot of action movies.
You don't have to. It's like. You don't really have to fight. It's not like you're involved in active combat. That's why he's like medic, because I know how to apply a Band-Aid, or sniper because I can be 400 yards away and then maybe kill somebody. But
he probably thinks it's like a Call of Duty thing where like he's just going to be hiding up in the bell tower as the enemy all walks towards them or something. Like that's not what being a sniper is really about.
Dude watched
like Halo. It's like, bro, let me get the sniper rifle. Trust me.
Yeah,
it's like playing Halo with Chad. He would be like, dude. Let me get the sniper rifle. Trust me, dude. Let me get the sniper rifle. And then if they grabbed it first, he'd just kill them. And then we get booted.
Do you guys remember that scene from Saving Private Ryan? You guys like? Isn't there that
like where he's counter sniping the guy in the bell tower and he shoots through the scope of the rifle? That's a great scene.
That was memorable for me because then you're like, you get that feel of like people trying to move through an area when they do have a sniper on. Like that's crazy. Like to be able to make any movement and not just like hide behind something and piss yourself the entire time. Crazy. But also I remember the guy would pray before each shot. Do you guys remember that? I remember when I saw that movie, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then my mom had mentioned that some people had a problem with that. And I was like, and this shows you how ingrained that like conservative mindset was in me at that point. Cause I was just like, why would anyone have a problem with that? Like,
right.
Nothing goes
German's
together
bad.
better. Yeah, nothing goes better than like Germans bad, Jesus good, military. Like
Yeah, it didn't make
so
any sense to me
That's
that people had a
why
problem with it.
we love World War II. Like, we love World War II
we
because
love
it's
our
got
made up
such a
version of World War II.
right. It's got such a clear version of good guy, bad guy, and like the way that it's taught and the way that we watch it in movies and stuff. It's like, well, America pretty much won World War II. Like, we basically fought the
Because
Germans
we're not
back
gonna
in Berlin.
Yeah, because we're not going to say like, and then immediately when the war ended, we turned to our allies and we're like, "You guys still communists?" And then that just kicked off the next like 6 decades of nonsense. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely not how we handled it. After they like 30 million Russians died, we didn't just go, "All right, you're now our new least favorite like group in the world. Thank you for helping us get rid of the worst ones."
I would love to see like a spreadsheet that shows the number of World War II movies versus the number of World War One movies.
Well, World War One, there's nothing. I mean, you've listened to hardcore history, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
I would love there to be a World War One movie if, besides Wonder Woman, if for no other reason than like think about a realistic Verdun movie. Something, in 1917, I think does a good job of this, of illustrating like how completely pointless so much of the war was. Like it wasn't, you're
Yeah.
just living in filth for years at a time. Like I feel like a good Verdun movie, the way Dan Carlin like described it, would be insane. I mean,
Oh yeah.
it'd be the next Saving Private Ryan, but it's going to end in a much more depressing way because the only possible endings for all of that were, and then we just decided to stop and like we got out of the trenches after how many years, and that was it.
Well, and that's yeah, that's what's funny about, or not funny, but that's what's interesting about the way we perceive World War One versus World War Two. Because I remember listening to that podcast, which, if you're interested at all, it's like a 5 or 6 part series. Each part is like 4.5 hours long. It's called Blueprint for Armageddon, and it's incredible. And I
Yeah, I
feel
remember
like
this.
it really gave me a framework for how I think about war now. And it's not that there's never been a good war, or a good motivation to go to war, not at all. But World War One's interesting because it's where like these classical ideas about warfare and glory and serving your country and all of this kind of stuff like come to grips with modern warfare tactics where, by and large, people died in a muddy trench filled with feces, and that was it. Like, nobody even knew they were dead. Their loved ones had to assume they were dead because nobody could recover their body. It was buried under, yards of dirt and mud and stuff like that. And like, I don't know, it's just interesting how we glamorize World War II versus World War One. When World War II had the same grind, like on the Eastern Front between Russia and Germany, and I think that even that itself gives you a better context for like how Eastern Europe thinks about war. I don't know. It's definitely worth a listen, and I feel like it makes you really just like look at a guys like Adam here and think, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you
Did,
doing over there?
did you ever watch the Peter Jackson documentary "They Shall Not Grow Old"?
Yes, that was very
Oh,
good.
it's incredible. If anyone doesn't know what it is, Peter Jackson, it was the 100th anniversary of the end of World War One. He was able to scan in or take a lot of already pre-scanned like film footage, and they stabilized it, and then they synced the frame rate to look like to run at the correct speed, and just did a bunch of other stuff to clean it up so it looks like not. It doesn't obviously look modern. It looks like old footage, but it doesn't look like 100 years ago. Like it makes the motions and everything look natural, and every single voice in the movie, I believe, is an interview with an actual veteran, not always the ones in the photographs or the video footage, but actual World War One veterans, all recorded in what, like the 50s and 60s, I think they said. But like if I remember right, every single word in the movie is it's all told from the perspective of veterans who lived through it. And that plus the footage, like I don't see how you could finish that movie and, I mean, just not have like a knot in your stomach. It was amazing.
Yeah. So, anyways, Adam, come home, dude. Come home. If you're not like serving sandwiches and bandaging wounds, doing support stuff, like, come on, man, get out of there and and leave those people alone.
He
Which-
went with a pack of 100 Band-Aids, some gauze, and he's
Definitely
also
like some Israeli quick compress things he bought at a gun show.
Which tattoo? What do you think the tattoo that he gets to commemorate his service there is going to look like? Like, what is it going to be?
He's going to absolutely go into the first tattoo place he finds, and in the Ukraine, be like, I want something that's reflective of your deep Ukrainian roots, your history. I want something that represents who you are as a people, because I feel like I'm one of you now. As
He's gonna take his
concerned about Ukrainian heritage.
He's going to take his Punisher skull with the thin blue line tattooed in the middle and add a yellow one next to it and be like,
a blue, a yellow. Yeah. It's going to be half a blue, half a yellow, and then that's it. That's Punisher skull, half blue, half yellow.
I think he's going to get a back piece that's Washington crossing the Delaware, but instead of Washington, it's Biden's face. Or Zelensky's. That would make more sense.
Yeah.
So, our guest this week is comedian, actress, and podcast host Alyssa Sabo. Her podcast is called Totally Rad, and it's an improv comedy podcast. It's a ton of fun. She hosts it with a guy named Ben that's also hilarious. But we had a great time talking with Alyssa about her upbringing, her near-death experience, which is pretty interesting, and just some of the things that happened once she moved to California, where, you know, she just really had a hard time connecting with local church community. But it's a really fun episode, and I think you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and Alyssa's social media is hilarious. One of the things she does that absolutely kills me is she did a lot of journaling, which she talks about a little bit in the episode, where, you know, as a teenage evangelical, diehard evangelical, she wrote a lot of things. And it's as interesting and relatable as you might expect. And so if you follow on social media, she'll post some of those journal articles that she had, journal whatever entries. That's I've been in school and I've been reading too many journal articles problem right there. So yeah, so good. She's absolutely hilarious. We had such a fantastic time with her. Pretty much right out the gate, she comes out swinging and is just a very fun, energetic person. And yeah, we had a great time. So enjoy our conversation with Alyssa Sabo.
Friends, I know a lot of you out there are small business owners. I know a few of you are musicians or artists. Regardless of which camp you fall into, eventually you're going to want to put out some custom merchandise. But the prospect of getting a design together and going through one of these impersonal, large-scale websites can be intimidating and tedious. And that's why we're proud to be sponsored by Minor Threads. Minor Threads is a North Texas-based custom printing company that is able to help you get your logo, your company's branding information, your design onto almost anything.
Maybe you want to order some shirts, some stickers, banners, maybe enamel pins. The merch game's crazy these days. Minor Threads can help you with all sorts of promotional products. They also specialize in custom printing with low minimums. That can be great if you're a small company just looking to put in a small order. And for our environmentally friendly friends out there, they have plenty of eco-friendly options as well.
So if you're ready to take that step and get some merchandise, go to minorthreadsco.com and request a quote. Mention this ad and you get up to 15% off custom print orders over $100. 15%. So again, go to minorthreadsco.com and tell them your boys at Grown Up Christian sent you. And we're back with our guest, Alyssa Sabo. How you doing, Alyssa?
Oh, hi.
Are you confused because you said your name wrong?
No, it was perfect. But I was like, when you were like, and we're back, you know, and I was like, where were you? Oh, you did like an intro. Oh my gosh.
We did.
Yeah. Future tense. We will do an intro.
I love this. I can't wait to hear I can't wait to hear what the intro is.
It all depends on the next hour, like how generous we are, or, you know.
We're generally unrelated to anything. There's not usually heavily topic driven, unless something funny happens that week. And, you know, Not
just go over Prairie
yeah.
Quest.
Yeah.
This is great. I feel also the way I'm talking is like it's like literally my first time like being on a podcast or seeing a computer. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, you've never podcasted before, right?
Never. No. No, actually I have. I love pods. Huge fan of them, listening to them and being on them. So if you're listening and you have a pod, I'd love to come on.
I love
Be
that.
careful what you wish for. So your inbox exploding like as we speak.
Oh, that'd be cool.
No, it is.
You guys are great.
I think it's so fun being on them because it's like you don't have to direct anything. You let other people do the work and you just hang out and say whatever you want and make people deal with it.
Yeah. I guess this is like my first time like maybe I did one pod where I didn't like know the people, but it is like there is something very like startling about just being like, hello. And we're gonna have our first ever convo recorded, and like, and I'm just looking for friends, so I'm like, I hope we can be friends at the end of this.
I think we're gonna be friends.
I think we're on the same page.
Okay,
I think Casey and I start off every we jump on, we're waiting for the guests, like, oh, they're in the green room. I hope they like us. I really hope we stay close after this.
Oh,
maybe they'll ask to come back on. No.
I would love to. I love being a recurring pod guest.
Even though you've never done them before, so it's just a dream of yours.
It's a dream of mine, yeah.
So I know about your work because of my friend Jesse. He's a big fan of Totally Rad. I don't know if you know Jesse.
Jesse who? I love Jesse.
Put last name, address.
Sorry, you don't have to.
Right now.
I don't know if I know him. I only know like one Jesse, and that's Sally Jesse Raphael.
Yeah, you definitely don't know Jesse.
Yeah. So that's so nice. I'm glad that they like it because, that podcast. I often sometimes we've been doing it. So it started out. It was like a talk show, and it was live, and it was just it was very fun, like as a talk show. But then when the pandemic hit, my co-host was like, maybe we should just, make it a pod. And I was like, do you think people will understand that like I'm playing a 16-year-old version of myself and you're playing you? And then, and he's like, I don't know, we'll see. And then I always tell people, I'm like, so just so you know, like I'm going to be playing a character that's like an evangelical freak. And then people are like, yeah, Alyssa, you didn't really seem to be playing a character. They're like, you just kind of seem like yourself.
Comes naturally.
Yeah, and I was like, no, I swear, it's a character. But that's so great. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad that people are enjoying that.
So
just Jesse, that's the only one we know.
Oh yeah, sorry, just Jesse. I'm sorry. I'm so glad that my one fan Jesse loves me. And oh yeah.
So you got to have some deep youth group kid roots to tap into that, because I sense that you're a method actor.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you lived it.
Yeah, so I yes, that's a great way to get into it, and I know you guys went to Liberty, and I was like self-proclaimed president of my youth group. I'm from a really small town just outside of Pennsylvania, and we went to kind of a smaller church. My mom was kind of like the youth leader, and then it was like me, my two older sisters, and like three other kids that were just like, why are we here? And my mom was like, come on, y'all. She has like a very like Southern way to her. She's from Memphis. And so it was just this like weird experience. And then Liberty. So this camp, it's called Go Tell Camp. And they like reached out, Go Tell Camp with, Rick Gage Ministries. They reached out to our little church and they were like, we want to help your church. And like, we're going to offer you guys like some financial support if y'all want to come to Liberty University and bring your youth group, and like my mom was like, okay, this sounds good. So I was 12 years old, like when we kind of went to this camp, and we stayed in the dorms at Liberty. And, I was definitely like, oh, I love God. I love going to church. But it was truly like at that camp that I became completely obsessed. And like, I'm this 12-year-old prepubescent teen that's just like hearing these like powerful Southern men
Yeah.
talk about like, you will never be good enough for God unless you got the blood of Christ, and like they're going into it, and it's like there's all these hot worship leaders, and like it was big. We were in like, a big like assembly. I don't know where it was. Like y'all probably know,
The
but it
Vine
was.
Center? Was it that dome?
Yes, the dome. And I was like, we're in the dome. Like I feel God in the dome. And, it was fun. And so I just was like, got so carried away. And at that camp, I remember on Thursday night, it was like the big message. And he was like, so if you, also the other thing that was there was like Elvis Presley's stepbrother, Rick Stanley. He like preached a sermon, and I was like, I gotta do this. It's Elvis's stepbrother. Like, and so he was like, that night, he was like, this is
Only the
it.
best celebrities for Liberty University.
Yeah, it was that was pretty cool. But he was like, this is it. He's like, those of you, if you accepted Christ, I was like, check, I did that. And then he was like, and then rededication. I was like, I rededicated my life on Tuesday. Check, like Monday I accepted, Tuesday I rededicated. And
Because
then
you had already
Thursday,
sinned so much between Monday and Tuesday.
exactly. And then Thursday, he was like, now, if you feel called to full-time ministry, which I had no idea what that meant.
Jesus
but,
Christ, he came
but
out
I was
swinging.
like, yeah. But also, at the end of the day, too, when I learned everything I learned, I was like, okay, Jesus died for our sins. They were taking us to the mall, teaching us how to pass out, gospel tracts and like evangelize. And I was like, yes, of course. Like, what else would I do with my life? I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I wasn't telling everybody about Jesus. If this is the truth, you know what I mean? Like, if we're going to hell and
Right.
I have the answer, of course I will be a full-time minister. There's no other option for me. So he was like, if that's you, come running up to this stage. And of course I like sprinted my little butt cheeks over there. And I like ran onto the stage, and I was like, I remember just standing right next to him, and just being like looking up at him and looking out at everybody, and everybody was like, woo, cheering. But I remember being like, why isn't everybody on this stage? Like, what, you know what I mean? But they were
Is that
like,
when you first realized you loved being in front of people for real?
Yeah, I think so.
It was less the Jesus thing and more the rush of just an
I
audience.
I think you're right. If I'm being honest, I was, because I do remember being like, okay, I'm on the stage, hand me the microphone.
What do you want me to say, God? I got a word from the Lord
Yeah.
already.
God is good, and check out this impression I can do of my sister. Like, but yeah, that's kind of my origin. That's my villain origin story. And
Dude,
then
Christian camps are wild because, like,
Totally.
and we've just gotten to touch on them a little bit because I did, I went to Christian school most of my undergrad. I went to 3 years at Liberty, so I did a lot of those different
Wow.
things. But like, nothing is more intense than camp because they have you for like
Yeah.
days at a time. They own 100% of your time, and it's like very deliberately structured. They like run you into the ground for days, and it's fun.
Yeah, you're out in the sun, you're at the pool, you're sweating. You're like,
corn dogs.
You make
3
it sound
squares
so
a
much
day.
sexier than it is. But
yeah, you're like eating. Yeah, you're eating the cafeteria food, and you're all sunburned, and like, yeah, totally. And then at night, it's like, it's time to get emotional, and like, you're ready. Like that, you are primed and ready for some kind of wacky experience.
yeah, to pour your heart out into complete strangers that you just met. And
Yes.
tell them all your deep, dark secrets and sins.
I definitely had that
100%.
like exact same thing happen though at a camp where it was like the most embarrassing moment of like my entire, junior high school years. But I was at this camp, same thing. Thursday night, it's the big one, right? We're gonna do a 3-hour altar call.
Oh yeah.
And they started in on that path. They're like, he started at the very tippy top. He's like, let me ask you, children. He's got us all. We're, got our heads bowed and our eyes closed, and they're playing
With
this.
every head bowed and every eye closed.
Yeah.
No
Because
one
no one's going to look up.
looking around.
No one's looking.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking around.
No one's
Everyone's looking. I would like to be the guy.
Every eye closed.
I'd like to be the guy on the stage, seeing literally everybody looking around and saying, "Nobody's looking right now.
Yeah,
Put
nobody's
your hand
doing
up.
that, like,
this is you. Put
that,
your
like,
hand up."
It's
that
so
bowed
funny.
squint where you're like,
And why? Yeah, and also, like, why did it have to be that everybody's eyes were closed? Like, if we're like not ashamed of Jesus, like, why did it have to be like, you know what I mean? Like, who made that up?
Yeah, it's like no. Hey, no
don't
one's
know.
looking. Everyone's
one's
eyes.
looking.
Everyone's eyes are closed. No one's looking. How many of you jerked off last night? All right.
Yeah.
No one's looking.
No one's looking.
I mean, I'm
Did
looking,
you?
but no,
Who did?
nobody else.
Okay, nobody's looking except me. I'm allowed to see. But you know what I mean? Like, why was that? Yeah. And then you're just like kind of like your head's down and you're like, you have your head down like so low that you're like, you know what I mean? You're staring at the ground and your eyes are like open. And then you're like, you can like feel. I would always be like, because then I became like obsessed, and then I would like bring friends to camp and like try to get them to like believe, you know. And I remember kind of being like, I'd be sitting like next to my friend and I would be like try intentionally sitting like close to her to like note, like see if I could like feel her hand go up, you know what I mean? Like I was just like, like I had my eyes closed but I was like, I felt her move, you know.
Oh my
It's no
god.
pressure or anything. I mean,
Yeah.
this is your decision, but it's really important to me that you accept Christ.
Yeah, it's like,
That
there's
brings
no
back
pressure. You're
daytime
just gonna
memories.
burn
have
in
not thought
hell.
about that.
Just gonna burn in hell, no pressure. But you know, and I'm not looking. You'll burn in hell though if you don't raise your hand. But whatever.
Yeah.
If you die on the car ride home, because my mom's driving us home and she's been drinking, if you die on the ride home, do you know where you'll spend eternity? Anyways, thank Sister Gladys for providing chicken fingers for the whole week. You know?
So wait, did you guys you grew up with Christianity or did you go to Liberty because you loved the education there?
The funniest thing I've heard since we started doing this. It's been a little over a year, and that is the best question we've received about it.
Oh, we are thoroughbreds for sure.
No,
we grew
I
up
could
in
say
it.
that because I too went to a Christian college that taught me nothing.
Like I got we were tried and true, you know. So like
Okay.
I was.
Well, yeah. Were there any people there? Maybe there were probably people there that maybe just like were there because of the like sports or something.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm sure you guys had some good, and they weren't necessarily Christians, but for the most part, were you kind of like trucking along with like a lot of just like hardcore believers and stuff?
Yeah, that was my big thing. I did like hall leadership, you know, was a prayer leader. It was like
hall
facilitated a weekly Bible study essentially. Had to,
and everyone was guilted into going to.
Yeah, and if they didn't go, it was like your RA would come talk to you and be like, "So I noticed that so and so hasn't been coming. Have you talked to him about it?" I'm like, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "Well, how come?" I was like, "Because he just doesn't want to come." He's like, "Well, did he tell you that?" No, I guess I'll talk to him. And then I cornered him in a bathroom and was like, "Hey, I have to talk to you about why you're not coming to prayer groups." And he's like, "I just don't want to." I was like, "Okay, I'll report back." Like I wasn't getting into it.
So you weren't like as mad at him. Like you were more just like, oh, I'm gonna let him do his. See, now I would have been.
That was like fucking off drinking. I would have been like, and doing stuff that was wrong. I probably would have tried harder. But he was one of the kids that I thought would like, you know, took his faith seriously and just didn't feel like wasting a night. So I was like, he's good. But if he was like on the bad path, I would have been. I really been reaching out and trying to like, hey, come on, maybe ask him out to lunch or grab a cup of coffee, you know?
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. I was an RA at my Christian college and
which college?
Yeah. I went to Grove City.
I don't know that one.
It sounds familiar.
It's kind of like you know Wheaton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very similar to Wheaton. They were like kind of Calvinistic and stuff like that, which I didn't know what that was. But yeah, it was
fun
very
ones, right?
Yeah, they're the ones that are like predestination, and I was getting into it with
reformed. They were reformed theology.
Like predestination. Then what's the point of me evangelizing on the rooftops? But
I feel like you would have fit in with a Pentecostal church really well.
I should have. I honestly, I definitely would have fit in way more at Liberty. I kind of just went to Grove City because my sister went there, and you know I was just kind of like doing whatever she was like. You know, I just wanted to be where she was, and yeah, I was at this point. I don't think I was ready to be too far away from home, but 100%, I feel like Liberty University, I would have been like hanging out with Jerry Falwell.
And his unzipped pants.
Oh yeah. No. Well, him and his unzipped pants, I've been like, I love that. Keep them unzipped, brother. Let it fly.
Hang it out.
What am I'm gonna get myself canceled. No, but yeah, that's crazy. It is just like, I don't know, like even just thinking about you like cornering some kid and being like, wait, why aren't you in prayer group? Like that's so funny to me. Like that the fact that we used to feel the pressure of like
Yeah.
everybody's like, you know what I mean? Like not only their eternal salvation, but their like well-being, their walk with the Lord. Like the fact that we were so invested in like, do you know what I mean? Like it's just so bizarre to me. I think about some of the girls that, you know, they were like on my hall, and the way I was with them was like, I was like, I have an open door policy. The store never shuts. And whatever you need, whatever prayer, anything, which is like kind of cool. Like that I was that, like, I love you guys so much. Like, but also I had no like sense of boundaries. And, you know, a lot of them were just like, probably like weirded out by it. They were like, I just want to like study. And my RA is like losing her mind. And yeah, anytime I had to like plan events, and I remember one of my events that I planned for them was like it was called like Boy Talk, and I had like three of my like guy friends on like a panel, and I was like, you can ask them any questions. I got three Christian men here, and whatever
Oh
question
my
you have
God.
for them. And that like the girls were like, what are you looking for in a wife, and like it was insane. And like my guy friends were like, what is this? Like most of these girls on my hall were like, you know, they were like homeschooled. And I think, you know, if I was a freshman and my RA had like a boy question panel, I would have been like first in line. I would have been like, what does your butt look like? Is it the same as mine? What's a boy butt look like?
This is your second butt reference, so I can't wait for more.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're a butt guy.
I'm a butt girl, yeah.
You like butts? We're establishing
Anyway, that's so funny
Wait,
though.
do you remember any other questions
Yeah,
that
that's
people
what,
asked?
that's
Yeah,
what
they were just, yeah, they were like, it was a lot of like the classic like Christian dating stuff, you know. Like they were like, what, you know, if I have like I'm friends with this guy and I think that he likes me, but like I know that it's not my place to like bring it up. Like, what do you suggest I do? Because I want to see, you know, like that kind of stuff. Where, and he was like, yeah, like I feel like he was just like, I don't know, ask him, you know. But I would have been like, okay, no, Joel, that's wrong. I was like, you need to submit. Okay, you need to pray to God. God will put it on his heart and he'll bring it up. Okay,
You had a
like
whistle in a referee's outfit.
Yeah.
And you was like blowing it. Hey! That's a technical foul.
I know. It's so funny that I'm like, let the man lead, but I'm like, but not these men. These men
Yeah,
don't know what
well,
they're talking about.
They're not men yet.
But
You know,
yeah,
they're not married.
I'm trying to think of what else. I think the girls were I think they were kind of like intrigued, but also like weirded out. And I feel like I probably even had my boyfriend. Like I had, you know, my college boyfriend. I probably had him on the panel. So they were like, what made you know you wanted to marry Alyssa? And he was like, oh.
You're like, hey, we haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah,
So you should have given
like,
everyone a list of questions they couldn't ask.
Yeah, I was like, what's the answer? But it's so fun. I would have like, there are some girls that, you know, I'm like, I wonder if they would have more of a memory, because a lot of that I feel like I've blocked it out. But I remember it was called Boy Talk, and I used to make these little like promo videos for all of my events, and I do still have the promo video. It's pretty
My God.
iconic.
Oh, I want to see that.
To see that
There's
so
like a
bad.
picture of like an Amish boy. And it's like, what's he thinking?
I'm gonna be bothering you for that after this.
I will send it.
Please do.
Yeah.
You were destined for entertainment. This is unbelievable. You went through so many lengths to provide good spiritual leadership, and I appreciate that and I respect that about you.
Oh my gosh. Well, thanks, y'all. You know, I was just trying my best. No, but that is 100% true. Like, it was actually in college that, I mean, I've always been like a character. I've always been obsessed with comedy. But, you know, when you're like, I grew up in Pennsylvania, very small town. I never knew that, like, oh yeah, this could be my career one day. I was just like, I'm going to be the funniest Spanish teacher in, you know what I mean? Like Johnstown, PA. And that's it. Like, I will be the funniest teacher. Cause I was going to be a teacher. And then I was always kind of like doing characters and stuff. And then in college, I remember there was this like sorority, and they were like, oh, we're doing like a whose line is it anyway type event. And they were like, Alyssa, we want you to be in it. You're so funny. And I was like, oh no. I was like, I can't do you know, I'm funny, but not like when I'm trying to be. And like that kind of scared me, you know. And but I spent so much time making these videos and just doing like random ass videos that like had nothing to do with my schoolwork, and I was like failing every class, but I was like, I gotta make a video to promote this like worship service. And that was like what I was spending all my time on. And so it is like kind of funny when I look back, and but again, I grew up very much like, I was like a singer, so I sang in the church, but it was always kind of like I always dealt with like, oh, I know I like love telling stories and like making people laugh, but that's like bad because God should get the glory, not me, even though I deserve the glory.
Oh my
But you know what
God.
I mean? Like
Yes.
I always like wrestled with like, oh my gosh, and any like when I would sing even and people would be like, beautiful job. I was like, all glory to God, and they're like, okay.
It's
But
so
But
it's like
true.
things that you
they're
had
like,
to say that you're like
yes,
in your head. You're like, I think I mean this. I hope I mean this.
right.
I really like applause.
Yes. And
You know?
my family was like they were like very encouraging of like all of my stuff. I think, and they never said like that you're not allowed to be funny, Alyssa. You know what I mean? Like I think that was more me just being like, I got to be meek and submissive even though I don't know how to do that. So, I do remember also like the girl like I remember always, feeling like um the like especially Christian women. I know you guys probably didn't grow up Christian women, but like there was something about these like
Well, we're
especially when I
straight white men, so we really know everything we need to know.
yeah,
That
exactly.
works.
But
So,
they
Experts. We
were
could be on a panel.
there
yeah,
was this like yeah, I'm gonna have you guys on the panel. But there was this
let's
like
redo
vibe
that.
of like being a Christian, especially when I was, in the early like 2010s and stuff. Like it was just very like yeah, it was kind of like you're feminine and soft and like very, you know what I mean, like ethereal and things like that. And I there was this group of girls that I always like tried to fit in with, and like I would like try to hang out with them. They had dinners like on Wednesdays, and I would be like, "Can someone talk a little louder?" Because they were always like, "Oh, I love," like they would just like talk really quiet, and I was like, "I can't hear. What are you saying?" And like I never like really knew how to fit in with like them. And then there was, but then there was like the Christian athlete women, and I was like, all right, this is more my speed. But I always just kind of felt like an outsider, I think, in general, like in the church and stuff like that. And but for me that wasn't necessarily an issue because I was like all about my individual walk with God. I was like, sure, I don't
Because it's
fit
a
in at
relationship,
church.
not a religion.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I was like, I very much was like, yeah, maybe I don't fit in here at church, but like in the quiet of the night with my candlelight and my Bible and my journal, like that's where I'm seen, which I know that sounds insane, but that's how I felt about it.
Did you have a teen like study Bible
Oh, of course.
for
The
that?
extreme
Perfect.
extreme teen
I think I
Bible.
had that one.
Yes, and it had the like little stories off to the side
Oh my
where it was
God.
like, you know what I mean? It would be like, so what's Paul going through? It's kind of like the same thing that we're going through when we're trying to figure out whether or not we should drink alcohol.
Yeah, I love the correlations that always get made. It's like Paul was living in a prison, and you're living in a prison of your own emotions. It's basically the
Yes.
same. It's like Paul was being
Yes.
whipped by a cat of nine tails, and you are being whipped by 9 difficult people in your life.
Yeah.
And you're, what are
Some
you
people
talking
Because
don't even
about?
you're
want you to
not
say the
on
Pledge of
varsity.
Allegiance.
Yeah.
It's
They're
so
gonna
wild.
try to say happy holidays at your school instead of Merry Christmas. That's the
Yes.
same that Paul was going through. Oh yeah, I bought into all that shit. I was like, I ate that up.
It's
Oh,
funny you
yeah,
mentioning
us
like
too.
the sexism, whatever. I remember like for me so I didn't start drifting out of like your evangelicalism until like my early mid 20s. So like I was part of a church, and I was that's where like for a year I lived in Boston for a year, and I was part of a church plant because I wanted to do the cool thing of like being part of a church plant. And that's during that year was like a big like, oh fuck, this is not me anymore. Like I don't know if a lot of change happened that
Oh.
year, but it was like I think I thought maybe the pastor was going in a different direction than he was. He was my youth pastor when I was in high school. And the last sermon that I remember that I paid attention to when I was like, I need to leave. This shit sucks. Like, I don't want to be part of this anymore. It was one of those like, women are the weaker vessel. They're like fine china up on a top shelf. And I was like, where the fuck am I? I felt blindsided. I was like,
Okay,
I
but
did not.
actually, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
I am fine China.
and then it's like, and it's different but equal. Different
Yeah.
but equal. Different but
Yeah.
equal. And you're like, yeah, I get it, but that's not how that works, and that's not what you mean. And you're
Whoa.
like, I can't do this anymore. And that was like, my wife had been like, she kind of felt like leaving just because of where we lived at the time. She didn't want to live in Boston really anymore. And
Sure.
and
What
I
did
was
she
like,
think of that sermon? Was she like, he's
I
right,
don't
or was
really
she like,
know,
what's
to be
going
honest.
on?
She probably thought it was lame. Like we talked
Yeah.
about it a little bit, but that because we talked about it because that was like, oh, this is. She had mentioned maybe we should like move back to, Central Mass, and I was like, I really want to stay in Boston. I just love the idea of living in Boston. I had a great time, like
Yeah.
being in the area. It was, I mean, Boston's a fucking awesome city, so I liked that. But
Mhm.
then that was the night I was like, no, I'm with you. There's nothing here for. I'm not gonna do this anymore. And if I don't have
Yeah.
this, I'm not gonna like. A lot of our friends were moving away from the area. They were having some of the same issues too. They're like, we're not this anymore, I guess. So we were everyone kind of went their
Interesting.
separate ways.
So the church kind of dissolved.
No, the church is doing great. It's still going
It's
strong.
thriving. Wow. See, that is kind of interesting. And I do wonder, like, that's the thing that I'm like, why is it like stronger than ever all the time? Like, what, you know what I mean? But it's not, but it is. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that have left, but then there's a lot of people that are like getting into it, and I'm just like, what's going on? Like, because when it kind of all came unraveling for me, it was like a slow process, and it really was in my mid-20s that it started to unravel. And I wonder, like, now that I kind of am like out of it a little bit, I'm like, like, what was going on? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh, I think that was kind of like culty. But then I'm like, or was it? Because, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm like, how? So I'm always curious to hear how other people, I feel like I didn't just say a sentence. I'm always curious to hear how other people, like, you know what I mean, dealt with that.
Yeah. It's weird.
It's like as you get older, your own values get cemented more than they were when you were a kid. When you're a kid, you're thinking like, everyone here knows more than me, and so I just have to listen. Even if it doesn't make sense to me, I need to submit to the adults in the room and listen and stuff like that. And the older you get and the more life experience you have, the more you start to realize, like, I know this dude. I've met him 30 times all over the place, different people, and that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, this guy doesn't know, has no
So
life
true.
experience. Like, he has no idea. He's not the adult in the room, and the mechanisms of control start to wear thin,
Right. And then you're like, yes, that's so true. That's such a true statement of like, I met this guy 30 times. But I don't know, maybe there's something still in me that's like, oh, what if they're right and I'm wrong? But then I'm like, no, because I don't know.
Logic.
And this is something that like my friends and I who are kind of, we talk about it, and we're like, whenever people are like, well, you must not have fully believed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh no, I believed.
Yeah.
I believed harder than anybody could imagine. It wasn't just like, I wasn't just going through the motions, And
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I got my Bible degree. I was bought in, hook, line, sinker. I was fully invested. I was like, it was some of my final classes at Liberty too, when I was like, what the fuck are these people talking about? This doesn't, like, there's just making shit up and writing it in a book and publishing it under their publishing company and telling you it's true. Some of the shit was insane. Like, when I took, like,
what kind of stuff were they saying? Because, like, I know, like, yeah, I'm curious.
It was like the things that stick out to me the most were like I took a class on the Book of John, and the whole wedding at Cana was like, now, okay, the alcohol didn't, the wine that Jesus made didn't really have alcohol in it, and he like just threw out a bunch of buzzwords around it, like it's like kind of like photosynthesis, and I'm like, photosynthesis is not part of the process of making wine. It's like you're just making shit up.
How do they know that? And also, like, yeah, it's like, but how do we know that there was actual wine there? What, you know what I mean? Like, was it?
Like, the story is he made water into wine. You're gonna try to bridge that gap, bitch? It's like not possible.
It's like, also, I'm like, did that really happen?
You
Like,
know,
this is the stuff
Their
where I'm
thing
like,
was like you couldn't
what do you?
drink the water back then because of parasites and things like that. So they had this
Oh,
process where they would mix fermented juice with it, and it actually had like a really low alcohol content. You could never get drunk on this stuff, but it killed the bacteria and stuff. So it's wine, I guess, technically,
oh,
but
so they were
you
like
shouldn't drink.
against
You should
drinking,
not drink.
yeah,
Hey,
it was
don't
basically
drink.
saying it
even
was
when you're
grape juice.
21. Even when you're 21, they wouldn't want you to drink.
There was
You
a lot
weren't
of them
not
that
allowed
did.
to. I worked at Liberty, and it was like technically you weren't allowed to drink if you worked there.
Wow, so they were okay. So that's like pretty Baptisty. Like that's
Very
like
Baptist.
yeah. Okay, yeah. I don't remember our school being that way. I remember like there was this one class we had to take. It was called Science, Faith, and Technology, which just like made
Oh.
already it's like
I
what?
love where this is going.
Why is this the name of the class? And
It's
I
like, don't sign
remember
up for Tinder on your cell phones, okay, kids?
yeah.
It's like,
It was like I remember there were some professors you could get that like were going to teach one thing and then some professors would teach another thing. Now some of the professors were teaching like creationism and then some of them were teaching that evolution was the tool that God used. So that was like I remember being like what?
theistic
Yes,
evolution.
and I remember being like, huh? Like I was very much kind of like I don't know about any of this, and because I grew up very much like I was the girl that would like raise her hand in science class and be like, just a reminder to everybody that evolution is a theory. And if you
Yeah.
need a reminder of what theory means, let me know because it's something that hasn't been proven fully, and everybody was like, "What?" Like,
And then the
and I
other
was
kid
like,
goes,
Some
have you
arguments
heard
that,
of
like-
the theory of gravity? I'm like, okay.
yeah, but I was just like, let's get on to intelligent design, please. Like, and so that's like where I was coming from. I really had no idea what I was like saying. And then kind of still don't fully know what was happening like in college. And I was always kind of like, who do I need to fight? You know what I mean? Like who's saying the wrong thing? And I
Me
think
too.
yeah, I was just like so then I think once I left college and then I kind of decided that like okay, obviously I had some other crazy things that happened to me like after college where I had this like crazy medical experience happen in between my like junior and senior year. I like fell into a coma and needed to have like a new liver
Ooh.
Holy
and it
shit.
was crazy. Yeah, I was like on a mission trip, LOL, in Dallas, and got sick there, and then was like woke up 2 weeks later with like a new liver, and then that was like right before my senior year. So my boyfriend comes down, like proposes to me, like he's like she's alive, and I remember being like, this is the most amazing like story.
Did he
I
put
can't
the ring
wait.
in your old liver and just
Yeah,
like
he
have
was
you
like,
dig it out?
"Here." Yes, exactly.
That's
But I
that's
remember
so
like
cute.
thinking like, "Oh, Mercy Me is gonna write a song about this." Like, oh, and once Mercy Me gets his paws on this story, he's gonna. And then, of course, that like engagement kind of fell to pieces.
That puts a
And
damper on it.
yes, and then I was like, after that, after I was like, well, I'm not gonna marry this like amazing Christian man. I don't know what's going on. I didn't pass any of my classes. You know what I mean? Like I'm not really able to be a teacher because I didn't pass school. And then that's whenever I was like, well, I guess I got my charm and my personality. And that's when I decided to pursue comedy. So it was kind of like, it's interesting that this whole like liver transplant thing and like this failed engagement and then obviously moving to LA. I mean, it's not that like you're not that surprised to hear the like, and she fell away from the Lord after all that.
And
But
they took
yeah,
her liver and they surgically installed a Keurig pod.
yeah, exactly. It's like that, and then I even remember my ex fiance. Like I heard through the grapevine that he like told people he was like, ever since she got that liver, she was a different person.
Oh, that liver had a demon in it.
Yeah, and I was
That's
like, yeah, I'm
amazing.
a different person. I'm alive. I was dying before. Like
That liver
but-
came out of an Armenian. Or what do they call that?
It's like the organ equivalent of a salt lamp.
I know. I was like,
What's the
yes.
opposite of Calvinism?
Oh, yeah.
Arminianism.
Arminianism. There
Wait,
you
what
go.
did you say? You
Arminianism.
actually
You said Armenian.
Armenian.
I was like, what?
Yeah,
Whoa.
that was not what I was trying to say. My
I
bad.
know.
To Armenia, sorry.
Is that what it is? Armenianism?
Armenian. Now Armenian. Now you got me
Armenian.
all fucked up in my head now.
Was it Arimathea?
Yeah.
That
Arimathea.
guy, Joe.
Or
Sleepy
I was
Joe
like
of
she got a
Arimathea.
liver. She got a liver from an agnostic. Like
Got that atheist
I
liver.
know it was an agnostic. But yeah, so that was like kind of my whole journey, and of course, when you're kind of confronted with your mortality, how cliche of me to be like, well, what have I always wanted to do? And it's like, make people laugh. All right, here we go. Let's give it a shot. And that's what I've been doing for the past
Was
couple
it
years.
like that's so many changes in a short
I
period of time? Was it
know.
like, did you feel free, like you could pursue a thing that you really loved, or was it like, I feel completely adrift and unmoored, and I don't know what
I
I'm gonna
felt
do?
I felt amazing. Like obviously I was like so sad and I missed him and was very scared, but I was like, whenever you're doing something where you're just like it's just like you feel so natural in your body when you're doing it because it's like the thing you love the most. That's like what I was feeling. It's like a bliss. That's what like they would say is like your zen or whatever. So that's how I felt every morning. I was waking up and like doing whatever silly comedy or audition thing. I was just, even if it was like all random and weird, I was just like, this is awesome. And, of course, like I was like still trying to find my place in within like a church community and in like comedy and acting, and just trying to like find like-minded people. And honestly, like I think what ended up happening was for me, it was like I tried to go to so many churches out here in LA, and I was like, man, I can't connect with any of these people. Like, I don't know what's going on. I can't seem to have a real conversation with any of them. And then I would think about like all the people I was connecting with that were really like sweet and I was like laughing with and having a good time with them. And like they weren't necessarily going to church. And I was like, what am I doing? Like going to this Bible study to just like sit in this room and be like, okay, you know what I mean? Like where I could be actually like hanging out with people that I think actually like me and we're having fun. Do you know what I mean? Like so then I
Yeah.
was just like, maybe I don't want to be there. And then, and then I was like, okay, what if I didn't go there? And oh, that's nice. You know what I mean? This feels nice. And like just the way I think the thing that was the craziest, and it's funny because my best friend who I met many years ago when I first moved here, when I met her, I remember being like, man, she's awesome. I love her a lot, but like, too bad she doesn't know Jesus. We'll never be actually close, like really close. You know what I mean? And like,
Yeah, that's what we
and
were
then just
told.
like
Like your
pushing her
closest friends have to be
away.
that.
Yes, and like pushing her away and like her just being like that is so ungodly. Do you know what I mean? To just be like, but that's what we were told. Yes, we were told that like, oh, you're not ever going to fully connect with her because she doesn't know Jesus. And like so my two options are to like force Jesus down her throat or to not be her friend. That's insane. Like I'm not going to do that. And I started to realize that like in times of need and stuff like that, like I would, contact the church folks and they were not there and she was always there and I was like, why would I push her away? And I think just slowly I was like, maybe I'm not this and maybe I'm this, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so it was a very slow kind of like unraveling and
Did you
That's
have any particularly awkward church experiences while you were hopping around churches in LA?
oh my god.
I want to talk about some of those. And then I have a serious
Oh
question
my
for
god.
you. But
Well, yeah, first of all, like okay, I hate to break it to everybody, but all of the like things you would think about an LA church and like your like misconceptions about like everything that you would be like, oh, I bet an LA church is like this. Yeah, it's like that. It's fake, it's weird, it's vapid, and everybody's an actor. And all like I was on the prayer team at this one church, and I was like, oh, that'll be a great way to serve and get plugged in. So I'm like, they would have me go down like during the altar call or whatever if people needed prayer. I was like, there's people in the on the sides or whatever it's called. What is it called? Like in the not the
the
like
overflows, or
yes, like yeah, just like the side little hall sections. So I'm there and I'm like, can't wait to pray for someone who needs prayer. And like no matter what, every single time people would come up to me and they were just like, got an audition. And, and they were just like, and I know God told me that I am going to be a star and I'm ready for it to happen, and I was like, so what's the prayer like that you need? Like, and they were like, that I become a star. Like, it was genuinely insane. And I was
Oh
like,
my
this
God.
is crazy. Like, I feel insane. This is so weird. And so I just was like, I can't be on the prayer team anymore because I cannot pray for another LA actor. And because I need those prayers. I'm going to be
Yeah.
a star.
I'm soaking them all up for myself.
I'm saving those for me. Of course, I like the reason why we don't like stuff is because we relate to it. So obviously, I was just like, this is so weird. But there's something weird about actors in general. But then, like, you know what I mean? To add like God to it, it's like it gets even weirder. And of course, there's like these other weird churches that are so culty, and like you just kind of feel like you're at like a club, and it's like there's fog everywhere, and the person's doing like a weird TED talk, and they're talking about their like $1,000 t-shirt that they designed that you're supposed to buy, and I'm like, what? I mean, that site, like Preachers and Sneakers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Love it.
like, I love that. But yeah,
It's so good.
that's like LA. I used to go to Justin Bieber's pastor's church.
Carl Lentz.
Not that one, the
No,
other
that's New
one.
York. LA was
Judah something, Judah Smith or something. So he would come to Beverly Hills like on Wednesday nights, and he was living in Seattle or something. And he would come to Beverly Hills on Wednesday nights, and they would have this like hotel where church
God.
was, and that's where like the Kardashians would go, and like Selena Gomez, and this was, what I mean, this was like back a couple years ago, and I would like go there. Everybody's
Just
wearing one of
anybody
those.
could walk in. Wow.
Yeah, everybody was
At
wearing
least they
those
didn't
like
gate it.
hats. Those like hats. Those
Tinfoil
like
hats.
Hats?
the kind of like, you know what I mean? They're like the anthropology hats. Like, I don't know how to explain. It's like,
Oh, the big
yeah, the
brunch girl
brimmed.
hats.
Yeah, a brunch girl hat. And I was like, there's so many brunch girl hats. And like, I just felt like everybody was like, I was like, this is so weird. I didn't grow up, like, my church was like, there, like, people that were just like, they want to be there for you. And it was like a small town. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's like what I'm used to. I'm not used to
Yeah.
this, but, and then, oh my gosh, I had this like, this girl. I feel like weird to talk about it publicly, but you know what? I don't care. I still need to like
Put her on
recover from it.
blast.
It was so bizarre. This girl, like, she lived with me for a little bit. I met her like at church, and then she never spent the night at my apartment. And I was in like a small group with her and her boyfriend. And I was like, that's fine. I don't care. You know what I mean? But the boyfriend would like text me and be like, just so you know, she's sleeping on the couch tonight and every night, and I was like, dude, I was like, this is so weird. Like, I just thought I was going to have like a roomie and a friend, and you're being weird and you're texting me that she's on the couch. Like, I don't care. I just like, is she okay? Like, what is going on? And then he was like, yeah, he literally was like, we came over to get some of her things, and I saw some of your friends. My friends and I were like watching the Oscars, and like they're all just like these like my loser nerdy friends, and he was like, I saw the way they were looking at her. I could tell they were gonna sniff her underwear later, so I told her to pack all her underwear up. He literally said this to me, and I was like,
That's a
I was like,
direct
what?
quote.
Or I'm not kidding. I was like, sir, none of my friends want to sniff your girlfriend's underwear. I don't. So then I would like, he was saying all this stuff to me
Because
and
they're
then I was like,
sniffing my underwear. Thank you very much.
yeah. And then I would like go to Bible study and just be like there with them. And I was like, this is so weird. And then eventually he kind of told me that like, yeah, you're like inappropriate. I don't want her like living with you. Cause then at that point I had a boyfriend, and I think they like walked in on us one time making out. And I was like, oh,
How
it's
could you?
inappropriate to make out. But I remember just being like, okay. And he was just so bizarre. And like, so that happened. And then I remember going to that church. Like, I remember just like then being there after he was like, your friends are underwear sniffers and you're making out, and I would like see them kind of just like hands raised high, like front row, just like, and I was like, I can't freaking go to this church anymore. Like, this is so weird. I just feel so bizarre. I don't know what's going on. So
That guy, I feel like I know that guy.
yes.
So here's what I automatically think when I hear something like that, because my wife does like social media stuff and gets a lot of weird messages and stuff, periodically. A person who crosses all like who goes out of their way to instigate like a sexual conversation with you
Yeah.
that's totally out of the blue and inappropriate and doesn't make any sense, that is not a trustworthy person.
Well, and
That's
the
the
other
one you
thing is,
don't want to be alone with. You want to stay far away from that dude.
he is sniffing underwear.
Yes.
Like, I don't know who's sniffing underwear. The only person in my life that I would imagine, and I'd be like, who do I know that probably sniffs underwear? It's that guy. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I was like, my friends, they were just like, we're all just like total nerds. You know, mainly it was like, I think like my friend Brian, who's like a gay guy, and then like my other friend Kendall, who just is like a musical theater girl. And like, I was like, they don't want to sniff your girlfriend's underwear. Like,
My friends are into
what?
socks,
Yeah,
bro.
like we're watching the Oscars. We're rooting for Meryl Streep, and yes, we like socks. No, but I was just like blown away. But I remember, you know, that was a very pivotal time for me, and I was also very like very lonely, extremely lonely, and trying my darndest to be friends with this church that I was going to. I loved like the preaching or whatever, and I thought it was like a cool church, and I was trying to get plugged in as much as I could. But even the like the ministry outreach I was trying to do felt so bizarre. Everybody was like, it was all about like taking photos for Instagram. Everybody looked gorgeous at any of these like volunteer events. I was like, why? I was like wearing my long johns.
Long Johns.
Not
Okay.
long johns, but like I was wearing we're getting down and dirty. We're going into the sewer and we're gonna get some rocks out of the sewer.
Oh.
Like I just, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to wear my brunch hat here, but I just felt like I was like, this is so bizarre. And it made me kind of be like, huh, is it just like LA church or what? I don't know.
It's
And
like,
I always kind of figured I'd find my way back to church if it made sense, but then yeah, it
It
just hasn't made sense.
it
So
almost makes me wonder if like church, you mentioning LA church in the way that like it's kind of catering to LA people, or that maybe LA people decide what it's going to be like because they're the ones showing up. And then you think of like small town church, is that, and it's catering to small
yeah.
town people. Just
Uh-huh.
hearing this, being in this conversation, I haven't really thought about this before, so I have not fleshed this idea out. But I am thinking of like, is that what church ends up becoming? Like it's just a mirror of the culture that you're in? Is it really like, not
Wow, I
saying there
think
aren't
so.
like ones that might do it differently and that there aren't ones that I could find respectable in LA or something like that. I'm sure there's got to be some, but I don't know. But like when you think about like churches as a whole, and like when you go somewhere and you like check out churches, it's like, are they representative of the culture that they're just in?
well, they have to be, or else they don't succeed. Like here
Yes.
in Wichita, like you're not going to find a church here that is really successful and big, but is also like left leaning and gay and lesbian
Sure.
affirming and all of that kind of stuff. It just doesn't mesh with the cultural group here that is going to go to church. There's
Yeah,
a
all
lot
of
of
them,
people
Yeah.
here that aren't like that, but you're not getting them to church, probably. I would
and they all
guess.
think they're counterculture. That's what's weird about it, is it's all like
Yeah.
they all think they're going against the grain in some way because that's what Jesus did. And you're like, I don't think that's.
That's
I think
so
you missed it.
true. They think that's the thing that is like yeah, it's like, and it's so funny because I think about these little stories, and I imagine someone listening to this that like really wants me to get back into church and stuff. And like here, like I always think about like, oh, this is what they might say. They're like, well, you just had one bad experience with this person or that person. I'm like, is that what it was? Was it, or was that bound to happen? Because I had like 100 more of those experiences. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just think that it just isn't for me. You know what I mean? And it's okay if it's for you, but it's just not for me. And you're right. Like if I would have been in a small town, I'm sure then I would have kind of grown weary of all of like how close-minded everybody is. And I just be like, okay, I can't do this. Like, and but you know what I mean? It's just because I'm growing and I'm evolving and I'm getting to be more comfortable in the unknowns. And I was starting to have panic attacks and anxiety attacks that weren't getting solved by opening the scripture. So I had to kind of go to therapy, and you know what I mean? I had to start looking to things that would help me. And it's like, is that wrong? I was doing the best I could. You know what I mean? Like, so, but it's just weird when you think about it and you're like, huh, like, but because I used to be the kind of girl that would be like, I'd be like, Sam, Casey, you guys, okay, Jesus is not those people at the church. So you got to keep going. Like, I would have been like,
Yep.
come on, guys.
Well, I feel like my experience is similar in a lot of ways to what you're describing, because I think for me, like, once the cultural community aspect of church fell apart for me, and I was disconnected from it, I couldn't get connected again. And I feel like
Yeah.
what church sometimes does is it puts all of these external pressures on people who really ought to just prioritize like having a relationship with someone. If you are a genuine believer that really, tries to exemplify the principles that you're talking about in Christianity, and you prioritize your relationship with me above that, that will come through, and it'll come through
Mhm.
organically, and I'll respect it, and it will have an appeal that it's not going to have if you try to shoehorn it in ahead of you and I really getting to know each other and stuff. And I feel like that's what happened over and over. You'd visit churches and stuff like that. It's just these people who was, you're there to make friends because you are alone. For me, like,
Yeah.
we moved back to where I lived when I was a kid, but I didn't hardly know anybody there anymore. I
Yeah.
wanted to make friends, and these people like continually just made it clear that like that's not what they were there for. They
Yeah.
had kids and soccer
Yes.
practice and all of this stuff, and they really just want to shake your hand and kind of make small talk and then move on and not be bothered to get involved
And
with people.
the thing is, like, that's okay. That's the thing too. Like, I think for me, I also realized that like the expectations I was putting on these like other believers and other Christians to be my like helpers and like friends and counselors, because I'm far away from like home and family, and I started to realize like, and that's where I was able to be like, okay, you know what, that's not their job. And what my job is to do is to figure out a way to like cope and survive and thrive. And I found that in the comedy world. And that's just the bottom line. And like there's nothing wrong about that. If you know what I mean, like if at some point like I find myself wanting to go back to church, I find myself back there, then that's fine. But like right now, I figured out how to do all this stuff without it. You know what I mean? And it like I don't know, but yeah, it's just like I feel bad because I do like I hope I'm not coming across like these people failed me and that's why I left the church, because that's
No,
not why. It's
It's
just kind of like
it's easy to feel that way, but that's like a very
yeah,
fair take on it,
it's
and
just
that's
like
and
that was
that's
a
true.
part of
That's
it.
like I feel like that's a reality check that I needed a couple of times where I got real. You can get on a high horse pretty easily.
Sure.
and on the flip side of
Yeah.
that, I do feel like it's not so much like these people failed me, but like, I mean, we grew up being continually told that like the power of Christ is in this place and it's going to do these big,
Mhm.
beautiful, amazing things and it's going to change the world. And, it's like you're told all this, like all this stuff that, and then when you're older and you realize everyone's lives kick in and they're just kind of like, everyone's trying to get by. But like when
Yes.
you have, and then you go and you're like, well, I was told that that
Yeah.
all my needs could be met here, and they're not. And it's
Yeah.
like the problem isn't that that's not okay. The problem is that we were given bad expectations of what it
Yeah.
can do and what it's for. Like so now, like because I still this is always the bombshell for some people, but I still go to a church, and I am like I don't have any expectations of anybody. I don't, and
Yeah.
I like the people who go there. See some of them outside of it. It's a very small it's very small.
Yeah.
It pretty much after COVID doesn't. It's like almost got obliterated, but um, and
Hell
that's
yeah.
fine. Like,
I'm just
uh,
kidding.
but there were a lot of people who were just like,
It's
you
a
know
Zoom
what,
church.
during this time, like we realized that church isn't for us anymore, and it's just like, okay, we
That's
get
okay.
that's
Yeah.
fine. We
Yeah.
understand that it's not. It's
Mhm.
like there's no expectations here. Like, and I think for me, changing that was like I don't know. There's just nothing magical is happening in churches. And if you're going in and they're pretending like it is, it's gonna be like, and you're
No,
somebody
I think
who isn't
yeah.
drinking that Kool-Aid, you're gonna just be like, fuck this shit after a while. Like
I
this
think
isn't
that's a
nothing's
very
happening.
healthy way to look at it. And I think, yeah, like I said, like I've been lately thinking about how like, oh, you leave church and stuff, but like I am still a very like soulful individual, and I can't just like not have some kind of spiritual practice And I think that's something I've been lately kind of like remembering, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I have to still like nurture this little soul of mine, because I am a very, I do have, I'm an artist. I know that, like, and that comes with a lot of problems. There's a lot of curses and a lot of blessings and miracles. But, so like we have to remember that we are kind of like these beings that are so much more than just like what we eat and drink and like wear and like talk to, So I think that's something where I'm like, that's great. Like I know I have a lot of friends that kind of still go to church, and like they don't make me feel bad about not going or whatever. Like it just seems like there's been some new kind of yeah, like I think there's some new churches that have cropped up that kind of figured out how to do a good job at it, and you're right though. I think we were raised to have like some truly insane expectations. I remember when I got my hands on this book. It was at my grandparents' house, and it was like all about the Jesus movement in the 70s. And
Oh,
I didn't
yeah.
grow up like Pentecostal, but I read that book as a little girl, and I was like, I am obsessed. Like I was like, I want this. Like this is what I want, which was just so insane. It was like, you know what I mean? Like all of the like Holy Spirit, like people were like fainting in the Holy Spirit, and like I was like, this to me sounds amazing, because I'm like an all or nothing kind of person. And I was just like, if Jesus, I would love for him to do something like this. I would love to kind of live. I would love to live on like a commune with all these other believers, and you know what I mean? Just be like in tune with the Holy Spirit. Like I was so into that. And
You should check out
yeah,
Nexium.
I am going to. That sounds amazing. Vulnerable. Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like I'm very cult prone. And
I
but
love
I
the
just
admission of
remember,
that. You're like,
like I
you
am.
get it. That's awesome.
And I remember kind of hearing about like, kind of like a Jesus cult like that, but it seemed to me, it just seemed really realistic, and like people that were just willing to give up everything for Christ. And that was like, I remember
Yeah.
being like, I'll either do that or kind of like forge my own way, because like nothing else made sense to me.
Why is it that that is a very central theme of a lot of groups when they start, but how do it gets co-opted into something gross
Really
along the
cool.
way? Yeah.
I'm just
Well,
kidding.
sometimes really cool. I can't
Really
think of
cool.
an
No, no,
example,
no.
but
Of course, it's gross. It's weird.
No, the
It's
leader
going to
says, "Hey, can I? I need to
it's
take
go-
your wife into the back room."
Yes,
And,
like it is 100% going to go sour. It's going to be weird. Of course, 100%. Like, and I don't know. I think it's because like humans are freaking weird. Like
that is very true.
I remember I was like talking to some of my friends about, I was like they were asking me about like, oh, what was it like in your coma, and all that, and I was like telling them about it, and my one friend was like, Alyssa, she was like, if you wanted to start a cult, I would follow you. Like I would join your cult. She was like, because you've been on the other side.
Oh
And
my
I was
God.
like, okay. I was like, be careful, because don't say that, because that is gonna like, I'm gonna get an idea and be like, all right, guys.
We need more female-led cults.
Manifesting.
That is true.
Like,
I would,
off the top of your head, you start a cult. First rule.
yeah. I
What's
would
your
never do anything like that weird. I can see myself kind of being like, we need to make a TikTok. That's like the
first
worst.
rule? Everyone gets on TikTok. Okay.
Yeah, you guys have to film me. Okay, and also you guys, like, I can be doing something funny at any given moment. We don't know when. We need to capture it because we need to go viral.
If
Yeah,
they
that
miss
would
it,
be.
you like have them turn their cameras on. You're like, all right, we're gonna do that again. That was good. That was
I
good.
know. I'm like, oh, did anybody get that? I
Laugh
fell.
natural,
That was
laugh
really funny. We need to recreate it. Yeah, laugh natural, like it just happened. But of course, I would never start that. But you know what I mean? It's just like 100%. Yeah, like whoever kind of like has that in them, where they're like, oh, I could lead a group of people to salvation, and you just gotta be like, what is going on? Like
It's
It's
a
like
next
the
might be a
level
little
same
type.
thread that
delusional.
runs through most of the politicians. It's like,
Sicko mode.
who is sitting at home and thinking to themselves, like, I ought to make the rules for these people.
That's so true. There's a lot of jobs like that where I do find it to be insane. Like even somebody that's like a prosecutor, and they're like, I want to put people in jail. Like I know they're like doing the right thing, but I'm like, what kind of a person wants to like? Do you know what I mean? I know they're not, but like the fact, even like a bad guy, like wanting to put a
A
bad
win's
guy
a
in jail,
win.
that's crazy. And
Like,
then even a comedian is insane. Obviously, we're like narcissists. Like, of course I am. Like, I will admit it. Okay, but I don't have a narcissistic personality disorder.
I
But
like
I
that you're
am.
differentiating because there is
Yes.
that difference. There's not
There is.
narcissism isn't necessarily doesn't have to be bad. It's a personality type. Or
Thank you. Are you
trait.
my therapist? My
Yes.
therapist always tells me that. She's
I
like,
am in school for counseling right
I'm
now.
like a
so-
90
Really?
proof narcissist.
you are?
Yeah, I am.
That's awesome. That is a very like therapeutic thing to say.
I'm halfway through 2 classes, so don't get impressed yet.
Oh, okay.
I
All
just
right.
started
Well,
this shit. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm mostly the imposter syndrome setting in heavy. Every time I hit submit on a paper, I'm like, I'm a piece of shit. You should fucking kill yourself. You should. That's a little harsh.
Okay,
Sorry,
you
I'll put a suicide trigger warning on this episode. But
No, I think you sound really good. I think the thing I appreciate most about my therapist is that like, and this is what I think you'll be good as a therapist is like she
after
doesn't have that
an hour
like
of knowing me.
I
Go
know,
ahead.
I know. I already know. I'm like kind of a psychic, but my therapist doesn't treat me like I'm like a patient. She talks to me like a normal person and she's very like real. And of course she's like doing a lot of great stuff and like saying things, but I've had other therapists where they're like you know what I mean? They'll be like, I noticed you're laughing. Why? You know what I mean? And I'm like, you know why I'm laughing. Come on. Like, and I think it's just like obviously I think my therapist is pretty good at like she knows I think, you know, she knows my specific brand of neuroses. And I think, you know, I've been with her for 3 years and I think she figured out how to like talk to me because, you know what I mean? Like whenever she would talk to me very like therapist-y, she probably wasn't getting much out of me. But yeah, I always, and all the like hospital stays, I've been in the hospital a bunch. The best doctors and kind of like, you know, people caring for me are usually the ones that, yeah, they just treat me like a person. So that's my advice for you as somebody who needs a lot of therapy. Treat your patients like, you know, just treat them like people.
And that's my advice for pastors out there to treat
Yes.
your people like
Do you have a
people.
lot of pastors listening?
No, we have one. We had him on once. I don't think he listens anymore.
No, he was done.
You hated it? Oh my gosh.
It was weird. We had him on.
He told Sam he's not a Christian.
Yeah, that was funny.
Are you serious?
No, it was really good. It was great. It was the first time I
I'm
ever
was-
asked
it
somebody
was
a
kinda
question.
shaking.
I was just like, based on the
I
conversation.
need to
we had
listen to
today,
this one.
Do you think that? Would you say I'm a Christian? He's like, I mean, based on
well,
what-
him hot.
Oh my god. I need to listen to this episode.
he
Is
was-
it
I
still
mean-
available?
We don't really take any of ours down, so yeah, you can still
Okay.
get it. There's a backlog.
Pastor Mike.
Pastor Mike Rule was
Pastor
a
Mike.
episode. He was nice. But it was just a strange. It was weird. That was a little earlier on, and you're like, you realize how unequipped you are to like. It's weird. You think you have it in you to like argue with somebody, and then you realize you like fumble around a little bit, and you're just like,
Oh.
this is everyone. It's weird to try to handle confrontation on an actual recording, and then
Oh yeah.
you're like, but that was the intent of it. You know, I talked to him for a couple of weeks. We're like, yeah, look, I mean, we don't
Wow.
see eye to eye on anything, so let's talk about that and see where it goes. And it was
Oh,
Interesting.
interesting.
We had
But,
a
Hey,
mega
that's
church
cool.
pastor
I
on,
appreciate that.
and
You had a mega church pastor?
yeah, and we ended up scrapping the episode because it was exactly
Send it to
that.
me
Like
privately.
he
I want a private.
like let him talk for an hour and a half, and then afterwards realized like that wasn't what we wanted.
Oh, that's really funny.
it's when you realize that like there's a difference between having conversations with people like we're doing now, and then
Yeah.
actually like, and then there's interviews where you're like, this person's not overly engaging, and you just have to ask them questions and keep it running.
Yeah.
And then there's like, oh, this guy's talking nonstop. He'll never stop because he's a pastor, and that's what pastors can do. And you realize you just let it. You lost total. I feel like, I mean, fact is, it's embarrassing to admit, and everyone's going to hear it now. We lost control of that interview like total fucking
No,
losers.
that's not
100%.
embarrassing. No, I think that's like iconic. And also, you guys have only been doing this for what, a year?
Yeah, with
Yeah.
no interview
Yeah.
skills prior. So
Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing. Like, it is very, and you know, like that's why, like, obviously the podcast that I host, like, part of my shtick on there is like I do play this like evangelical person who's like, and we interview real comedians and stuff. But at some point during the interview, I'm always like, everybody stop. What's going on? Like, why don't you love Jesus? You know, and the person's like, what? But like, if I had to actually be myself and like, you know, I think that would be so hard, like to kind of just, you know, especially when you're dealing with like different personalities and you guys are interviewing kind of like all sorts of people. Yeah, that would be totally challenging because you don't want to cut someone off, you know. I'm sure I've
Yeah, it's
rambled.
weird. It's weird to cut someone off and be like, "Look, I know you said you have," because it's the you know the past move. Well, I have. It's kind of a.
Okay,
It's three
things.
things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the
So then you're
SpongeBob
like,
voice where it's like 3 hours later.
yeah.
Exactly.
And you're like, okay,
Oh.
it's been 15 minutes, and we have to. I don't want to cut him off. I want, and you know, pastors. This is a pastor move, big time. We're like, and we're wrapping it up here, okay? And let me
Yeah.
to finish this up real quick, and then you're like, this. It's fucking 10 minutes later, dude. What the fuck's going on?
Yes, they always say, and you know what, to finish this up, yes. And then of course 20 minutes later and you're like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like,
More
oh,
false
man.
expectations. Thanks, church.
Dude,
Oh, thanks a
here's-
lot, Pastor.
Here's a
Dude,
question
I
for
had
you.
my oh yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna
Sorry. What? Okay. You sat through a billion sermons as a young person.
Uh-huh.
What's a sermon you remember?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. One that really kind of like stood out to me. Now, what age group are you talking?
Oh, any, because I can't get too
Any?
selective with my memory.
Okay, yeah, this is an interesting question. I mean, obviously, like, I have to go back to the one that had me, like, you know, want to make the decision to follow Christ. And it was, so I remember at my church, we had this pastor who, he was like the kind of pastor that was like, and it's Sunday, which means football. Like we were always like, okay, he's gonna like do like a 5-minute sermon because he wants to get home to watch football. And he, you know what I mean? So his sermons were all very like, do good, be good, and love yourself and love your family. Goodbye, football's on. Like he,
I want
like
that.
he was just
pastor.
like, yeah, he was great. He was great. Alberg, love him to death. And then so then he left. I think he was like, I need to be closer to the football stadium. So he like left the church, and then we got this pastor that was like kind of starting to do sermons, and I'll never forget it. It was 1998, and I was like, you know, 7 or so, and he gave the gospel. Like he gave a very intense gospel sermon, and it was like, no one is good, like you will be separated from God if you unless you do this. And like it was just, like I just remember it so vividly. I'll never forget it. And it like I remember just being like, you know, 7 years old and being like, holy shit, like this is what is going on. And like thinking about like Al Berg, I was like, why did Al never tell me this? You know what I mean? Like he was always just trying to watch football. Does he know about this? And so and then like that pastor was he was so insane. He like, you know, obviously had like a doctorate in theology, so he made everybody call him like Dr. Hill.
Oh, please.
Cool.
And I was like, I just remember being like, you know, obviously that first sermon he gave, I was like, okay, sure, you are a doctor of my soul. And then I like once I got to know him a little more and he became really like good friends with like my family, I was like, this guy's a freak, you know, like he was crazy and he was so weird. So I remember always being like, that's crazy that he like led me to the Lord, because then I started to see the downfall of him and the bad stuff he did. But I remember when I like then kind of went off to college and came back, like I remember he was giving a sermon once, and at this point I was just so over this guy. And I remember he was like trying to say something about like how scientists are wrong, you know what I mean, about something and everything. And he was like, I
As a
was reading in the
theologian.
newspaper. Yeah, he was like, I was reading in the newspaper today about scientists are saying that gravity isn't real. Like that's not what the scientists were saying. Like I don't know what he was meaning. And then
I'm
he was
surprised
like,
you didn't
huh.
listen to that scientist on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Yeah, he probably loves Joe Rogan. And then he was like, huh, interesting. And he like took a pen and he like dropped it and he was like, what do you think about that, scientist? And everybody was like, whoa, like cheering. And I was like, what's going
So
on?
dumb.
Like
Dude.
it made no sense. And he like, so I remember that one. I remember being like, where am I? And just all of like, I think the sermons that stood out the most too were always like on the 4th of July, that were so like God and country, you know what I mean? Like, because I have a friend who's like Canadian, and I remember kind of like realizing like she grew up in the church, and I was like, oh, but you didn't have like the 4th of July. She was like, no, Alyssa, and I was like, oh, that's right. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, that's such a big part of American Christianity.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Where you're just like sitting there and you're like, all right, okay, President Bush, I love you so much. Like,
The title of this sermon is "The Devil
yeah,
Went Down to Baghdad."
yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of like there was just a lot of I do remember a lot of the ones from like being out in LA. You know, they were I don't know. I'm trying to think of like something that's like notable, but I don't want to just speak to speak, and I will do that sometimes. I'll just be like, for like 10 minutes. I'm like,
Were you a Christian music fan?
oh my gosh. Oh yeah. It was the only music I really listened to. Well, this is a story. I don't know if I've ever actually like shared this online anywhere. I think I've talked about this on stage. But
I punched Rebecca St. James in the mouth.
I punched her. No, so when I told you about that camp, right? Like at Liberty. On my way to the camp, when I was like kind of just a normal Christian and I wasn't like a fanatic, I had just bought Shania Twain had a new album out, and it was like her pop hit. It was called Up. It was very fun and just like very like nothing bad about it, nothing satanic at all. But it's Shania Twain, you know. She's just singing like up, 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 can only go up from here. It's about like, you know, whatever, just being happy. So on the way to we
Doing
drove
coke.
to Liberty. Yeah. We drove to Liberty, and on the way I was like, play this, come on. And there was like you know, and then like all I remember is that like on the way back from Liberty, I like told my mom, I was like, I need you to burn this CD, like the Shania Twain CD, because I was so convinced and convicted that it was like wrong and bad. And of course I bought like all the CDs at Liberty, and was like, then I was just like worship music only. And you know, Barlow Girl was a huge influence for me. I was a big really big Barlow Girl fan. I also really loved Bethany Dillon. She was like the Taylor Swift of like Christian music. She was like a acoustic singer-songwriter. You know, a lot of her stuff was like for teenage girls, which was actually like pretty sweet. Like some of her stuff was like very like precious, you know what I mean? It was just like about like you are more than you know, and just like about like there's some good stuff about it where
Yeah.
it's like you're valuable, you are like loved, you know, like that's good. Like and then of course like huge Casting Crowns head. I just was
Is that
like,
what their fans are
oh
called?
man, I
Never
was
used that word before.
guzzling. I was just like, anytime they had a CD, I was like, yum yum yum, gimme gimme gimme.
They don't call them
Yum, yum, yum.
crowners.
Oh yeah, we call ourselves crowners. I saw them in concert like so many times.
When they're
big
coming out on stage, you're like, they're crowning.
really good stuff. Really good stuff. Don't make fun of Casting Crowns. No, I'm just kidding. I've like listened to their music recently, and I'm like, what are they talking about? They have a song where they're like, the song like "What If His People Prayed." They're like, "Stop asking Oprah what to do."
No way.
Oh, they've gone that route. They're like
literally
culture warriors now.
They came for Oprah. And they have this other song. It was called "Here I Go Again," and I remember it was like, here I go again, talking about the rain and mulling over things that won't live past today. And he was basically saying how like he's with his friend who's a non-believer talking about the weather. He needs to be talking about God, and because his friend could die in a car accident. And I remember just being like so convicted by that song. I was like, oh, that's really good. Switchfoot was a huge Switchfoot head.
I went to a
Yeah.
Switchfoot concert one time.
Were they good? Probably. They're good musicians.
I feel like, yeah, or maybe I'm thinking of Sanctus Real, actually.
Oh, I was I see you name a band, I loved them.
Were
I was
you-
just like, yeah, Sanctus Real, so good.
Would you stay like worship pretty much, or did you get into Christian rock or rap?
I definitely was like more of an emphasis on worship, but I also was like I loved Jeremy Riddle, Natalie Grant, Rebecca St. James, all these like real white ass singers. It was like, you know, but it was also like I was also just like a teenage girl, and so yeah, I definitely kind of related a lot to like Barlow Girl. But this was the other thing. It's funny because I grew up so Christian, but I didn't like it wasn't necessarily my family like forcing me to like do all this stuff. So that's why I think it was like real for me, because I still was like watching really funny movies. That is the one thing I'm like glad that like my dad was kind of like not really into it, and he would always, he was like, he's very funny, and I think he like, it was important to him that I was like funny. Like that was something that he was like, that's great, like anytime I was being funny. So I'm like, in a way, I am like, I'm thankful that I had that. And I want, you know what I mean, I didn't have these like psycho Christian parents that were just like, you're not allowed to watch Billy Madison or anything like that. They were just like, oh, watch whatever you want, like we're gonna be down here working on the yard. Like, they're always just outside working.
You know what's funny is one of my parents were, I mean, they were pretty evangelical Christian. They had some hang-ups on things we'd watch. Kind of once I turned 16, whatever, or got my driver's license, they really let up. Like once they knew I could go to R-rated movies and do whatever I wanted, they stopped caring about shit.
Yeah.
And I think they pretended to care longer than they probably actually did. But I remember like watching Tommy Boy with my dad, for the first time. And
Yeah.
it's one of like the most vivid memories I have with him, like good memories. Me and my brother and my dad sat up in my room and watched Tommy Boy. And it's like, I mean, my dad was on the floor. He couldn't breathe. I thought he has asthma. I thought he was going to have an asthma attack. He was just like,
oh my god,
could not. He was like coughing. It was the funniest shit he'd ever seen in his life.
Chris would have loved to hear that your dad almost had an asthma attack.
Me and my brother were looking at each other like thought it was the funniest fucking thing we had ever seen. It was such a good moment. And I don't have a lot. Like my dad wasn't a big comedy guy. Like we didn't watch.
No, but that's like that is a thing
that's
where
the moment,
because I know that it's like one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I think I was like. Well, it's also funny because your parents are a big influence in like the media you intake, other than like whatever, just the stuff you're listening to alone in your room and stuff. But it's like it is interesting. My mom and dad were like they liked weird stuff, so I'm grateful that they did kind of like expose us to different kind of like forms of media. But then also like I'm really having a fun time as an adult, kind of getting into stuff that I probably like deprived myself of because of just like being so trying to like inundate myself so much with like Christian culture and being like, well, I can't watch that movie because of so that was more my own doing. But now as an adult, like I'm finding so much joy in like listening to albums that I never would have like thought to listen to. And like I do feel like some of these like movies that I'm seeing, it's like really fun to watch them for the first time. And I know that that's cool, you know what I mean, because I'm like, wow, some of these like great movies that I never really like got a chance to see, like I'm seeing them for the first time. And I don't know, it's kind of nice. It makes you kind of feel like a kid again in a way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is funny when you have like a marker in your head around something like that you wanted to see so bad you weren't allowed to, and then like later as an adult like get to go back and watch it, and it's like 50-50. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's horrible. Like I really wanted to see the Street Fighter movie, and by the time I got to it, I was just a little too old for that.
Like,
for that stuff.
Okay. Yeah. It is like, it's one of those things where there is like some stuff about like I'm really grateful in a lot of ways for how I kind of grew up. And like I do think that God was a huge like force of good in so many ways for me, at least. And like I've always struggled with like really really bad anxiety. And I remember as a little girl I would like weep like when my grandma would like leave to go home, like to drive home to her house. I would just like sob because I was so worried she was going to die in a car accident. And I'm like realizing as an adult, like that's not normal behavior for like a 6-year-old to do that. And but we grew up, we didn't necessarily know like, oh, she might have some kind of problem. And I was like ripping out my hair because I was like so freaked out. And I think what God did was he came in, and my mom said, well, here's a verse, like God looks whatever, like the birds of the sea or the air.
His eyes
Birds
Clothes
of
on
the
the
sea and the
sparrow.
fish of the
Yes, like,
air.
are
It's
you not
beautiful.
more valuable than him? And it like, and I was like, oh, and I felt it. I felt my nervous system kind of like regulating, and that's what it did. It was like it regulated my emotions and my nervous system. It helped me in a lot of ways to kind of like sort things out. Then I started journaling. Of course, I have like 100 journals, and they, like that helped me, and that's so in many ways, like, I'm grateful. And then also there's a lot of like things that I struggle with because of it, which are not so happy. But everybody has something, you know what I mean? Everybody like has their stuff, and I'm like, well, this isn't too bad.
Yeah.
So I think that's because kind of just like, and I want, I think the most important thing, and the thing that I am like will never not be, is the kind of just like the kindness. And I think that's like what my parents kind of taught me, of like to love people and like to be kind and to go above and beyond and like helping them. You know what I mean? And that's something that will never not be me. And so it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not doing it for the glory of God. But just to be a good person, and that's okay,
Yeah, and I think that's what we talked about over and over again, is like the best case scenario is for you to like, it's not always to just trash everything that you grew up with, and stuff. I mean, best case scenario is like keep the things that you value and that enrich your life and make you more secure and make you happier. And
Yeah.
the stuff that you don't have a use for, get rid of
Yeah.
that. Let it go.
Yeah.
Put it.
I think what's weird about it is
Yeah.
like belief is like we were taught like the end all of end alls was just the belief that you had in it, but you also knew that belief required something of you. And I think that maybe like the sermons we got probably emphasized, the belief or the damnation that might come from disbelief. But most people's parents probably were like just hoping that it would help their kids like make good decisions and not do drugs in high school or drink or
Yeah.
have sex or whatever. And then
Yeah.
you get older and you might shed the beliefs, but you're like, you still kind of develop a sense of morality. And it's just like belief is kind of just a vehicle for
Yeah.
people's morality in a lot of ways. I think that because for me, like there's a lot that I don't believe anymore. I mean, I don't really know how to put it, but I'm like, generally will be, I don't, if you ask me about like tenets of Christianity, I don't believe in them. Like if you ask me about any of the theology, I don't really believe in any of it, but the belief seems irrelevant at this point. Like, but it's more like
Yeah.
I like what it has to say, and if I operate my life under the assumption that like there's truth behind the intent of what that message is, like the outcome's the same, and the belief is irrelevant. And so for me, it's like it feels like that a little bit. Like I like believing in a message that actually says that the people who are getting fucked by society left and right, that capitalism doesn't care about, matter more than your Jeff Bezos's or your Elon Musk or something like that. And that's
I
not a
mean,
message
yeah,
that everybody
of course,
loves.
Jesus was like the OG socialist.
So like that's the shit that like kind of sticks with me, and that I just have that vocabulary so I can stick with it and make it work for me. And I don't really get I don't really get too much hang up on like the beliefs or disbeliefs
Yeah.
anymore.
That's good. I think that's the thing I'm trying to be like most comfortable with, is like just trying to be like curious and living and being okay that there's a lot of stuff we don't know. And I think that's the
Yeah,
thing that
for sure.
I learned, that like why so many people might not ever like question things within Christianity, and especially like evangelical Christianity, is because when you start to question things, like it is so scary to live in a world where you don't necessarily know what happens when you die, or like whatever, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like
Uncertainty.
that is like so scary, that uncertainty. But that's what's like so magical and like rich and beautiful about life, that there is uncertainty, and even so it's like anybody that ever comes to me and claims to like have absolute truth and like know all the
Yep.
answers, I'm like, I don't think so, because the smartest people I know are always telling you, they're like, look, I don't know shit. And so yeah, anybody that's like coming with you with like, this is absolute truth, it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it
You
feels
don't
like
know what you're talking
it
about.
feels like stage one of life is like just as a kid you need that certainty. Like stage one of life is certainty. Tell me that everything's going to be okay, and then no matter what questions come up, well, there's an answer for that. And stage
Yeah.
and that's you can though people there are people who can only find peace in that. And then
Yes.
I feel like stage two is like just like I still have very vivid memories of the first time I like took a deep breath and said, I'm okay with not knowing this, and I really mean that. Like I don't
Yeah.
I just know I'm not going to, despite my belief changes, I'm not going to burn in hell for all of eternity, and that there's a mystery in the way that in our existence, and I'm okay. And it's like
Yeah.
that's stage two, finding peace in uncertainty versus only finding peace in complete and total
Yeah.
certainty.
And then stage 3 is when you're on your deathbed praying really quick. I'm so sorry. I don't leave, I'm so sorry. Hey, that's all right. If you need to do that, like I don't know what's gonna happen to me once I start to get older. I'm gonna be like, oh Lord, like I might go back into it and be like, okay, here I come.
You'll start
Lord.
a mega church.
I will. Will you guys come?
Yes,
Come
absolutely. Only if I
For
can be
sure.
an elder, though.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
I'm more of an
And
usher.
everybody has to sniff undies to get it. Underwear sniffers only.
Before it's like before you take the Blessed Sacrament, like it's like someone holds out a pair of underwear and you sniff that, and then you take the wafer, and then you. I'm into it. That would be, if you start a cult, that's the first rule. The Blessed Sacraments are underwear sniffing.
Underwear sniffing.
Perfect.
I love it like that. I hope that's like the little like thing. And if you come to my church, you have to sniff underwear. I like a little soundbite. I want that to be like out of context, Alyssa.
Oh my God. Well, where can people find obviously you've got a great podcast, totally rad.
Thank you. Yeah. I post most of my stuff on like you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Alyssa_Sabo. And then if you're one of those freaks on TikTok, I'm over there too. That's actually, I do think my TikTok is like it's where I post a lot of my like journal readings. I'm still a little like kind of nervous to post them all the time on Instagram and stuff, because I'm like, I still got a lot of people I know. Like on TikTok, it's a bunch of like weirdos that are just like this. Oh, I love that. But I'll do these like kind of dramatic readings of my old journals, and on there I'm just at Alyssa Sabo.
Yes, those are worth checking out for sure. I watched one the other day where you were talking to a friend or something, and you're like, Lord, give me perfect words.
I think I said like, Lord, give me perfect words and give him no peace. Like, wow.
That's some Old Testament shit right there.
I was always praying. It's so funny. The comments are always like, they're like, this poor man hasn't slept in years. You're praying that he has like no peace, and he's like sweating every night, just like, I gotta make a decision for Christ.
Oh my God.
I don't pray. I pray just for peace for everybody. I no longer do that no peace prayer.
Laying off the brimstone. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, it's been so fun talking to you. It's great to meet you. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Yes, thank you guys so much. I believe we are now best friends.
We're friends now.
I'll see you
Church
soon. I'll see you at dinner.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.